Chapter 29:29. If Yi Shiwen was killed as soon as he achieved Tao, he would probably think of him for the rest of his life. In this life, he would never be able to end it. Therefore, the Star Emperor disappeared directly after he became famous. Compared to the other emperors of the Celestial clan, he was not famous at all. Therefore, Yi Shiwen couldn't recall the identity of this Star Emperor for a while. What kind of person was he? When the Star Emperor saw Yi Shiwen calling out his identity, he couldn't help but pull a long face. The biggest failure and the biggest shame in his life was brought to him by Emperor Huang Xianyuan. How could he not hate Yi Shiwen? You have completely infuriated me. There is no benefit for you, said the Star Emperor coldly, because your soul will be extracted by me and you will be tortured for eternity. If that's the case, then I will fulfill your wish, said the Star Emperor coldly. He waved his hand in the void, and then a transparent lake appeared in front of him. He opened his mouth and swallowed the transparent lake water. Almost in an instant, the qi and blood in his body began to rise wildly, as if he could tear the world apart with his qi and blood alone. Do you know what this is? This is the reincarnation water that I have spent a lot of effort to find. It can restore the greatest strength in a short time. You are dead, said the Star Emperor coldly. On his body, a metal armor began to appear. Star Emperor robe. This was the Tao instrument that he carried with him. However, there were many cracks on this Star Emperor robe. There was a big hole in his chest. It was this blow that directly injured the Star Emperor. It broke his Star Emperor robe. Only in this way could the Star Emperor be injured to such an extent. Even after countless years, Yi Shiwen seemed to be able to see how terrifying the battle was just by looking at this big hole. He seemed to be able to see the peerless style of Emperor Huang Xianyuan. The great Star Emperor became serious. He used the reincarnation water to restore himself to the peak. Then, he launched an attack. He no longer had that kind of patience. Instead of letting Yi Shiwen torture him to death, it was better to fight with all his might and kill him. The Astral Emperor's robe shone with a star-like radiance. Although it was already half broken, it was still much more powerful than ordinary divine weapons. With the help of the Astral Emperor's robe, the Astral Emperor's strength had leaped to the peak. Have you recovered to your strongest state? Then let me send you to hell in your strongest state. Yi Shiwen coldly smiled. The giant devil ship suddenly appeared in his hand. He had already refined the giant devil ship. It had his imprint on it, so there wouldn't be any problem for him to refine it with his martial power. Using a Tao artifact to fight against a Tao artifact was the only way for them to stand a chance against him. The time robe was mainly used for defense, not offense. The Star Emperor had completely recovered at this moment. The huge devil ship in Yi Shiwen's hand was getting bigger and bigger. Its huge body occupied the entire space as it rushed forward. The giant devil ship was very terrifying. It was the devil race's Tao artifact. Its status could be imagined. The giant devil ship is indeed good. However, it can't display its true power in your hands. It's best if it's in my hands. The Star Emperor jumped up and directly rushed out. He collided with the giant devil ship without any fear. Rumble! In an instant, the entire space was filled with billions of rays of light. The collision of both sides caused cracks to appear in the altar space. Endless blazing rays of light collided with each other. The most dreadful energy storm erupted. Again, the collision this time was almost equally matched. Both sides seemed to be unsatisfied. They collided again. Boom! 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 The fierce battle was still going on. A moment of collision might represent 1,000 or even 10,000 collisions. Both sides were equally matched. The Star Emperor was very strong. However, Yi Shiwen wasn't inferior either. He didn't give in even when facing a powerful emperor. Human, you're very good. You've forced me to this extent. It's time for you to die. A huge universe appeared behind the Star Emperor. The entire universe was getting more and more real. It was much more terrifying than the Milky Way just now. Now! Yi Shiwen's eyes flickered. In an instant, he attacked. The Star Emperor used his true trump card. However, when he executed it, it wasn't perfect at all because he was seriously injured. There was a loophole. This tiny loophole was meaningless to others because it was impossible for them to catch it. However, Yi Shiwen could. He really caught that strand of opportunity. The Avicii sword appeared in Yi Shiwen's hand. He had been hiding his trump card for a long time, and he had finally revealed it at this moment. He had been preparing since the beginning of the fight. He had been waiting for this opportunity to strike. Boom! An amazing sword aura soared into the sky. It instantly pierced through everything. The world seemed to be destroyed. The laws were destroyed. The universe was reversed. Everything turned into a black hole. He attacked ruthlessly. Under the sword momentum of the Avicii sword, Yi Shiwen's attack reached the most terrifying degree. This sword aura created a huge crack on the entire altar. Endless sword aura swept through the crack, completely alarming those who were still guarding around the altar. Although the Star Emperor knew that there was a loophole when he used this move, he didn't think it mattered. Even if Yi Shiwen used the giant devil worship, it was impossible to penetrate the defense of his Star Emperor clothes. He still had this bit of confidence. After all, the giant devil worship wasn't a Dao tool that specialized in combat. It was powerful. However, it was impossible for Yi Shiwen to rely on the giant devil worship to break his defense. However, he had never expected that Yi Shiwen would have a hidden Dao tool. This was completely beyond his control and expectations. A quasi-emperor with one Dao artifact was already extremely powerful. Having two Dao artifacts was simply heaven-defying. One must know that even he did not have two Dao artifacts. But now, a third Dao artifact had suddenly appeared. He was about to faint. It would be fine if it was a Dao tool like the giant devil worship. However, it was a peerless weapon like the Avicii sword that instantly destroyed all his defenses. Boom! Yi Shiwen's sword aura directly pierced through his Star River domain. It annihilated time and space, and fiercely blasted into the Star Emperor clothes. In particular, the Star Emperor clothes wasn't flawless. If it was flawless, it might be able to resist for a while. However, it had a huge loophole. It might not be considered a real weakness during normal times. However, it was enough to be fatal now. Bang! The Great Star Emperor was directly hit and was sent flying. His chest was drenched with blood. Blood spurted out, and the golden blood flowed like a river. His primordial spirit was slashed. The endless evil chi directly blasted into his primordial spirit. It actually began to burn his primordial spirit, the Imperial Emperor's primordial spirit. This blow shook the world. The illusionary Star River shattered on the spot. It was completely broken along with the Star Emperor being blasted away. However, this was just the beginning. Yi Shiwen had been waiting for this opportunity. From the beginning, his mind had been constantly calculating this opportunity. He had calculated countless methods. It'll be terrible if you continue to drag on. So, let me finish you off completely. Yi Shiwen soared into the sky like a rock. He quickly and violently swept past the Star River. He held the giant devil worship in his left hand and the Avicii sword in his right hand. He directly slashed down. The Star Emperor kept vomiting blood in the air. This blood turned into endless essence. It directly evolved into martial arts and magical powers. It blasted towards Yi Shiwen. This was to stop Yi Shiwen. However, these attacks were useless. Under the sword aura of Yi Shiwen's Avicii sword, all of them turned into nothingness. These attacks could not stop Yi Shiwen. In a moment, Yi Shiwen had already rushed in front of the Star Emperor. Sword of Domination. Yi Shiwen used the Sword of Domination with the Avicii sword. The sword light burst, and the divine light flickered. There was nothing more dazzling than this in the world. Yi Shiwen was merciless. The Sword of Domination in his hand erupted with unprecedented power. It kept falling. His killing intent exploded like never before. He had already gone crazy. He had to do this in the face of an emperor. If it was an ordinary person, he would have died under his sword. However, the Star Emperor did not die. He continued to forcibly hold on. One could imagine how terrifying the recovery ability of a real emperor was. It was unimaginably powerful. It was precisely because of this that he could not give the Star Emperor any chance to breathe. Otherwise, it would return to a stalemate. This was definitely not what he wanted. Die! At this moment, Yi Shiwen's Avicii sword, the devil's giant warship, and the time magic robe had all displayed their might. It was as if three powerful emperors had awakened at the same time and were besieging the Star Emperor. Numerous magnificent marks instantly appeared on the entire inheritance altar. It was about to be chewed to pieces. I won't die, the Star Emperor roared. For the first time, he felt a fatal threat. Won't die? You are thinking too much. Yi Shiwen's sword slashed down again and again. Every sword directly blasted towards the chest of the Star Emperor. That was the place where he was seriously injured. It was also his weakness. Bang! 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 The Star Emperor was constantly blasted away. Blood kept spurting out. His vitality was lost at an alarming rate. Boom! Yi Shiwen went crazy with the last sword. The sword directly pierced through the Star Emperor and nailed him to death. With a loud noise, the inheritance altar shattered. Chapter 29:30. In the land of origin, everyone only heard a loud bang, and they saw the entire inheritance altar explode. An earth-shattering sound rang out. It was as if a huge hole had been torn open in the sky of the entire origin grounds. Countless laws spread out in a frenzy like a tide of energy. Then, two figures flew out directly. It was the Star Emperor and Yi Shiwen. This is what's going on? Everyone was completely dumbfounded when they saw this scene. They didn't know what was happening inside. Originally, there was a strange movement in the altar, but everyone who didn't know what was happening inside could only guess that it was still in the inheritance altar. However, they definitely didn't expect such a fierce battle to take place inside. Yi Shiwen's sword was still firmly inserted on the chest of the Star Emperor. The vitality of the Star Emperor was slipping away with every passing second. The sword of Avicii was nailed to the chest of the Star Emperor. That was his only weakness. It was the biggest weakness that was exposed by Emperor Huang Xinyuan. Otherwise, the Avicii sword wouldn't be able to easily penetrate the defense of the Star Emperor's clothes. The Star Emperor's arm kept raising, trying to pull out the Avicii sword from his chest, but it was useless. He only felt that the power of his whole body was sealed, and his vitality was being sucked away at an amazing speed. He had no strength to pull out the Avicii sword. Moreover, after the collapse of the inheritance altar, there was no more mysterious power that could cover his injury. The Dao injury that was originally injured by Emperor Huang Xinyuan finally couldn't be stopped, and it began to relapse. His life force was weakening at an alarming rate. His body, his flesh and blood were swallowed by the Avicii sword. Ha 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 ha, this is great, it's really great. There was a carefree laughter from the Avicii sword. Even if it was a Dao instrument, there were not many opportunities to drink the blood of an emperor. Not to mention that it was sucking the blood crazily without being able to fight back. At the level of a Dao instrument, it was impossible to improve them in the slightest under normal circumstances. However, the flesh and blood of an emperor was an exception, and it was enough to make it to the next level. Roar! The Star Emperor was constantly struggling and roaring, but the scene in front of him was getting more and more blurred. The Dao injury on his body was relapsing and spreading at an amazing speed. This made him even more powerless when facing Yi Shiwen. He was indignant. He had dominated the world and had just attained the Dao. Yet, he was defeated by the human emperor Huang Xinyuan. In the end, even if he died, he would have to be sent off by the new talent of the human race. Even if I die, I won't fall into your hands. The great Star Emperor roared. His expression was indifferent, as if he had seen through everything in an instant. He was extremely calm. His aura was getting weaker and weaker, but the energy fluctuations were getting stronger and stronger. Yi Shiwen roared, "Not good." Yi Shiwen quickly pulled out the Avicii sword, and his figure suddenly flickered out. However, he saw a huge mushroom cloud rising up, and the surging energy tide drowned everything. For a moment, everything in front of him was drowned. The galaxy lost its luster, and the universe reversed. Even some parts of time appeared to flow backward. This terrifying explosive energy annihilated everything in the vicinity. Whether it was alive or not, everything exploded, Even though Yi Shiwen had already retreated thousands of miles away in an instant, he still spat out a mouthful of blood. The terrifying shock wave had completely annihilated him. If it wasn't for the protection of the time robe, even he would have been seriously injured by such an explosion. He might even have died. After the great Star Emperor attained the Tao, he had spent his life in grievance, but at the last moment, he still chose the most unyielding way to protect his glory and dignity. Yi Shiwen didn't have time to admire the great Star Emperor's unyielding way at the last moment, because such an explosion wave had already attracted the attention of other Emperor Lords. The great Star Emperor's self-destruction, even in a state of near death, was comparable to a full blow from an Emperor Lord. If Yi Shiwen hadn't dodged quickly, he would have been killed in seconds. Terrifying auras were projected down one after another, and each aura was completely different. It was enough to prove that the existence of several Emperor Lords in the Heavenly Clan was not a joke at all. Yi Shiwen suddenly felt cold sweat running down his back, and the complacency of just breaking through disappeared without a trace. Now, he was probably the strongest quasi-emperor in history, and he might not necessarily die in the face of an Emperor Lord. However, it was just that he might not die. Even if he used all of his means, that was all there was to it. At this time, he no longer intended to look for NID. Perhaps NID was also the focus of the Emperor Lords. Under the attention of the Emperor Lords, it was impossible to kill him. Moreover, several great Emperor Lords had already noticed this place, so it was even more impossible for Yi Shiwen to stay. Under the attention of the Emperor Lords, nothing could be preserved. Yi Shiwen immediately activated the time robe with all his strength, regardless of the injuries on his body, and suddenly tore a huge crack in the entire primitive land. A space passage appeared, and his figure suddenly jumped out. The demon wings on Yi Shiwen's back flapped crazily, and then he flew out of the Heavenly Clan's mainland in an instant, fleeing directly in the direction of the seal of the two realms. "Stay here!" A loud roar came from all directions, and then an overwhelming pressure was emitted and instantly crushed towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen only felt that his whole body seemed to have fallen into endless shock, and his hands and feet were not nimble, and a terrifying aura was catching up. "Damn it, I'm going all out!" Yi Shiwen drew out the Avicii sword and slashed out. The amazing sword light split apart, and in an instant the sticky aura was directly split apart, and then his whole body flew out instantly. Boom! The place where Yi Shiwen stood just now had completely turned into nothingness, crushed by a spiritual power. Yi Shiwen's action alarmed an Emperor Lord, and he chased after him. This was the power of an Emperor Lord. Although he had alarmed the Emperor Lords, he didn't regret it, because even if he hadn't escaped at that time, he wouldn't have been able to escape under the blanket search of the Emperor Lord's divine senses. So, it would have been better to escape before that happened. "You still want to escape?" The voice was even more furious, as if it saw Yi Shiwen escape, and was even more furious, simply provoking its bottom line. But hearing this voice, Yi Shiwen escaped even faster. What a joke! If he stopped, he would probably be torn apart by this angry Emperor Lord. Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen suddenly took a big step and instantly rushed to the edge of the seal. At this time, the Emperor Lord had also rushed over, and an unparalleled heavenly power swept down, directly falling on Yi Shiwen's body. Bang! Yi Shiwen let out a muffled groan and was directly hit. His whole body instantly flew into the seal, and a mouthful of blood sprayed out. After entering the seal, Yi Shiwen did not slow down at all, and in a moment he had already rushed out of the other side of the seal. And at this time, the other side of the seal had obviously received the notice, and many experts flew up one after another, surrounding Yi Shiwen who had just come out of the seal. "Stop!" A peak quasi-emperor directly flew up and wanted to disarm Yi Shiwen by relying on the number of people to seal him. Pucci! His eyes instantly widened, and he did not know when the Avicii sword in Yi Shiwen's hand had actually pierced through him. His life force was instantly sucked out by the Avicii sword, and he turned into a dried corpse, falling down. Comparing a peak quasi-emperor and an Emperor Lord, the difference was really too big. Even if it was a seriously injured Emperor Lord, there was no comparison at all. He actually dared. Go kill him. Suddenly, Yi Shiwen's behavior made these arrogant soldiers of the celestial race completely angry, and they surrounded him one after another, rushing up to kill. Puff! 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 The sword light in Yi Shiwen's hand launched a crazy massacre, and his whole body was like a rock spreading its wings, directly rushing into the encirclement of these celestial race experts, without the slightest fear. He had the protection of the time magic robe, and the attacks of those celestial race experts could not do anything to him, and he did not even need to care about the place where he was defending. On the other side, the Avicii sword was completely invincible, and no matter what kind of attack, what kind of defense, they all turned into ashes under the sword and turned into nothingness, unable to form an effective supply to Yi Shiwen. There were screams everywhere, and in an instant, there were mountains of corpses and seas of blood everywhere, and many experts fell like dumplings, and countless of them were cut in half by Yi Shiwen. Even peak quasi-emperors could only hold on for a little longer under Yi Shiwen's hands, and the others were all killed in one move. Blood flowed like a river, and in just a few breaths, more than half of the elites who were stationed in the seal had been slaughtered. Never had they imagined that someone could actually be so powerful. Even the legendary sovereign lords were probably only at this level. However, Yi Shiwen did not stay for long, because at this time, he had already completely alarmed the celestial race guarding the seal. There were Dao tools that were recovering, and there were also some methods that the guards used to deal with the emperor. If he were to forcefully fight, Yi Shiwen might even suffer a loss. There was no way he could gain anything, and there was no need to waste time here. Yi Shiwen used the Avicii sword to open a path, and instantly disappeared from the seal. When the celestial race and the seal saw this scene, they could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Although they also wanted to make a great contribution and stop this damn guy, they quickly gave up. What a joke! No matter how they looked at it, this was a super ominous star. Even if they used their trump cards, the probability of killing him was too low. When did such a monster appear in this world? Chapter 29:31. Yi Shiwen returned to the Myriad Heavens realm. His matter soon alarmed the entire Myriad Heavens realm. After arriving at the sealed area, although Yi Shiwen's appearance was still that of a Tian clan, the Dao tool he used was his own. Therefore, his identity was quickly discovered. This battle was really earth-shattering. Although no one knew that he slaughtered a real emperor in the origin ground of the Tian clan, he was invincible in the sealed land. He forced the Tian clan experts to not dare to come forward. In the end, they could only let him go. Such a glorious feat had already made the faces of many experts in the Myriad Heavens realm change. Many people received very detailed battle reports, and their faces changed. A peak quasi-emperor couldn't even withstand one move from the current Yi Shiwen. It was useless. How terrifying was that? It also meant that even though he wasn't an emperor monarch yet, his deterrence was already not much different from an emperor monarch's. How could this not make those old monsters who thought they were already standing at the top of the pyramid tremble in fear? They could already be said to be the strongest experts in the Myriad Heavens realm. In the era where the emperor didn't appear, no one could be compared with them. Yi Shiwen was at most on par with them in the past. In the past, Yi Shiwen was at most on par with them and became one of them. However, after coming out of the sealed land, Yi Shiwen seemed to have been reborn. Slaughtering peak quasi-emperors was like child's play to him. There was no difficulty at all. This made many people feel that they were in imminent danger. They were no longer aloof. They also had a nemesis. Yi Shiwen hadn't achieved the Dao yet. However, his threat wasn't any less than that of the legendary Emperor. They even had to use the trump cards and means to deal with the Emperor to be able to contain Yi Shiwen. Otherwise, there was no way to fight against his existence. For the allied forces of the various races, it could be said to be like adding wings to a tiger with the help of such a super expert. However, on the other hand, for the Tian clan, it was a huge disaster and nightmare. All the experts on their side were not strong enough in front of Yi Shiwen. They were not a match at all. After Yi Shiwen returned to the Myriad Heavens realm, he did not make any unnecessary movements. He just conveniently picked several strongholds of the Tian clan. Many experts died, tragically, in his hands. Those Tian clan tried their best to resist, but they were too weak in front of Yi Shiwen. After all, not every stronghold of the Tian clan had the trump cards and means to fight against the Tian clan. They could not stop Yi Shiwen at all. Soon, the morale of the allied forces of the Tian clan was boosted. They began to prepare a counterattack. They wanted to use Yi Shiwen as the arrowhead to defeat the Tian clan. Very quickly, the higher-ups of the Tian clan ordered the Tian clan to gather together and not disperse. In the past, there was no problem with this method of attacking from all directions, but now with Yi Shiwen, the biggest variable, everything was completely different. No one could stop Yi Shiwen, so they could only shrink the defensive line. Otherwise, it would be bad if Yi Shiwen broke through them one by one. At this time, even if the Tian clan was extremely aggrieved, they could only endure it. They were all waiting for DNI to become an emperor. As long as DNI could become an emperor, then the situation would be completely reversed. It would be completely different from before. At that time, the ones hiding would be the allied forces of the various races. The allied forces of the various races obviously saw through the thoughts of the Tian clan and began to attack fiercely. Especially the Tian clan camp. They were constantly killing. Yi Shiwen, who had just returned, joined the expedition army after healing his injuries. However, it was different from the previous Tian clan stronghold. In the Tian clan camp, there were countless experts of the Tian clan, and they had many trump cards. Even compared to the allied forces of the various races, they were not weaker. Even with Yi Shiwen as the arrowhead, it was still difficult. It was really an inch of land, an inch of blood. Step by step, the losses on both sides were incomparably huge. Soon, the allied forces of the various races could not hold on any longer. It was not like the Tian clan, where they were all one race. With the command of the emperor, everyone could fight to the death for the same goal. After all, the allied forces of the various races were composed of various races. They simply listened to each other. If the losses were heavy, even if they knew that this was to curb the development of the Tian clan, it would be useless. For a time, the attacks of the entire allied forces of the various races stopped. They were just slowly oppressing, repeatedly fighting inch by inch. They no longer had the momentum of a large-scale attack. Yi Shiwen quickly retreated from the front line because he knew that these things were of no use at all. As long as DNI did not die, then no matter how hard they tried, no matter how many experts of the Tian clan they killed, it would be useless. Now, DNI should be in the continent of the Tian clan, receiving guidance from the emperor of the Tian clan. When he reappeared in the myriad heavens, it would probably be the time for him to achieve Tao. At that time, it would be even more unstoppable. Therefore, to solve this problem fundamentally, there was only one way, and that was to achieve Tao faster than DNI. This was the fundamental way to solve the problem. Therefore, Yi Shiwen did not intend to continue to participate in the battle. Instead, he began to close up. Unlike before, he had now truly stepped into the peak of the quasi-emperor realm and was already qualified to attack the emperor realm. Coupled with the many inheritances of the great star emperor, he also had some understanding of the realms above the emperor realm. This was the root and foundation of everything. This gave him the possibility of attacking the emperor realm. Everything must be done in a race against time with DNI. He must not let DNI be one step ahead of him. After Yi Shiwen planned to close up, he called Yi Qianqian and Yi Mo over. Yi Qianqian also planned to close up again to completely refine the demonic worship. She had been injured by the Lord of Nothingness this time, and the fact that he had snatched away the giant devil ship had made her feel even more ashamed. She had slowly become accustomed to relying on Yi Shiwen over the years. However, she was still the peerless white-clothed woman of the Yi clan. She was still the peerless goddess of the Yi clan. She had made such a big name in the Yi clan back then, so one could imagine that she was also very competitive. This time, the incident was undoubtedly an absolute humiliation, a huge humiliation. This time, not only did she want to close up and refine the demonic worship, but she also wanted to thoroughly improve her cultivation to the point where she could truly rush to the same level as Yi Shiwen. Yi Mo had also just come out of the close-up to take a short break. He was still constantly digesting the emperor corpse, refining it, and constantly devouring the blood essence, turning it into his own, to truly forge the foundation of the emperor's road. At the same time, during this period of time, he also gave a part of the emperor corpse's blood essence that he had refined himself to Yi Qianqian. Otherwise, Yi Qianqian's cultivation could not have improved so quickly. This time, I'm going to close up, and it may be a very long time. I don't know when I'll come out of the close-up, unless there is a huge change. Otherwise, I will not come out unless I have the confidence to achieve Tao. Yi Shiwen looked at the two and said, "If I can't achieve Tao, the consequences are simply unimaginable. As far as I know, D&I has already received guidance from the Emperor of the Sky Clan. I am afraid it will not take long for him to achieve Tao. I must catch up with his progress. Otherwise, no one in the myriad worlds will survive." Yi Shiwen said seriously, and the two naturally understood the current situation. It could be said that it was really an extremely dangerous time. "Don't worry, I will also help you look after the matters here. You don't have to be too nervous. Maybe I will achieve Tao one step earlier than you and D&I. Ha ha," Yimo said with a laugh. During this period of time, he was also preparing for achieving Tao. Although it was not comparable to Yi Shiwen's fortuitous encounter, he had already prepared to the final stage. Maybe in the end, he might really achieve Tao one step earlier than Yi Shiwen. You have to be careful, especially the Netherworld Kingdom. They may also come. Yi Shiwen looked at Yi Qianqian and said. The only person he was worried about was probably Yi Qianqian. Among his three women, Hua Minghan was still in the ancient Phoenix world. It was unlikely for the Tian race to invade the ancient Phoenix world. As for Dawn, she was also in the Heavenly Realm. The Heaven Realm had martial arts sect, and even the Emperor clan, Ji family, and other colossal forces to guard it. It was also the true forbidden area of the Sky Clan. Only Yi Qianqian not only needed to stay in the Secret Alliance, but more importantly, there was a colossal force like the Netherworld Kingdom as an enemy. Even the legendary, extremely terrifying Netherworld Emperor was in the process of recovery. "Don't worry, I'll be fine. I'm not that weak." Yi Qianqian smiled gently. It seemed that she would only reveal a rare and brilliant smile when she was with Yi Shiwen. "If that's the case, then I'll go into seclusion first," Yi Shiwen said. Previously, he had already instructed the Hidden King that no matter who came, he would not meet them. He had also sent people to deliver the news to the ancient Heavenly Court, martial arts sect, and other places. Therefore, very soon, the news that Yi Shiwen was preparing to achieve Tao spread throughout the heavens and realms. Originally, this was not considered big news. After all, in the heavens and realms, there were many peak quasi-emperors. These peak quasi-emperors all had the power to overturn rivers and seas, and they were all preparing to achieve Tao. Some of them had even begun working hard to break through to that legendary realm millions or tens of millions of years ago, but they had never succeeded. And Yi Shiwen was originally just one of these people. But during this period of time, Yi Shiwen's performance was too shocking. From many juniors who needed the protection of many big shots, rookies, to the current peerless expert, his transformation was too shocking. Therefore, in the eyes of many people, if there was anyone in this world who could achieve Tao, then other than D&I, only Yi Shiwen could. Therefore, when the news spread, there was an immediate uproar. Had he finally reached this step? Chapter 2932. Those who could reach this step were famous for many years and had conquered the world. In Yi Shiwen's generation, it was rare to even step into the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. Not to mention that the peak of the quasi-emperor realm was equivalent to the gap between an ordinary peak of the quasi-emperor realm and the Mahasvara realm. Yi Shiwen not only used less than 10,000 years to reach the quasi-emperor realm, but also leaped into the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. Now he had reached the point where he could reach the emperor realm. Among 10 peak of the quasi-emperor realm, there might not be one who had the strength to reach the emperor realm. Although everyone had been mentally prepared since Yi Shiwen's strong rise. But when all this really happened, many people still felt unprepared. Especially at this critical juncture. This kid has a promising future. Maybe he really has the possibility of success. Someone exclaimed. There were many people who wanted to reach the Emperor realm, but in modern times, only Emperor Qin had really reached it. The others had been wandering outside the door for years, exhausting their efforts. At least in terms of momentum, Yi Shiwen was the most likely to succeed. Most of the people who became emperors since ancient times were like this. There were not many people who could slowly grind in. But not everyone thought so. Some people thought that Yi Shiwen was already an arrow at the end of its flight, and it was impossible to really rush in directly. Otherwise, how could these old monsters bear it? There were people with different views, but in any case, it was a good thing for the coalition forces. In the future, when they fought against the NID, they would have one more trump card and a little more hope. Even if the NID became an emperor, it was not the most fatal for the coalition forces. After all, many immortal emperor inheritances had the means to restrain the emperor. It was impossible for one emperor to really turn the tide. The real trouble was that after the NID became an emperor, he broke the seal and released the other emperors of the Tian clan. In that case, it would undoubtedly be a disaster. Just one emperor was not enough to deal with, let alone so many emperors joining forces. On the other hand, the heavenly race had also raised Yi Shiwen's threat to the highest level. From time to time, super experts would go to the Hidden Alliance to probe. Although Yi Mo and Yi Qianqian would come out of closed-door cultivation to protect them from time to time, the two of them were already exhausted from dealing with these super experts. Fortunately, later on, the allied forces of the various races knew their place and sent experts to stop the Hidden Alliance. Only then were they able to block the Tian clan's tide-like probing. All of a sudden, the heavens and myriad realms fell into a strange state of waiting. The Heavenly Clan was waiting for DNI to achieve Dao, while the allied forces were making various preparations. They were also looking forward to Yi Shiwen breaking the miracle and achieving Dao before DNI. Although this kind of hope seemed very slim, it was better than sitting back and waiting for death. Although both sides were waiting, the killing did not stop at all during this period of time. Both sides were filled with experts, especially many of the younger generation who had begun to rise up crazily. It was like a true golden age, with experts emerging in large numbers. Since ancient times, there weren't many golden ages like this, but there would be countless experts and geniuses emerging in any one of them. After Emperor Qin, such a great age hadn't appeared for many years. Even under the tempering of life and death battles, there were more experts emerging in these years than in the past countless years. It was as if a catalyst had been released. Breakthroughs that couldn't be achieved previously were also being achieved. Time passed day by day. In the blink of an eye, 3,000 years had passed. In these 3,000 years, everyone's eyes finally left Yi Shiwen. Because he had been in closed-door cultivation, no one really knew what level he had reached. In other words, it was possible that he hadn't made any progress in these 3,000 years. 3,000 years wasn't long, but it wasn't short either. The eyes of the heavens and myriad realms were focused on the younger and newer group of people. Everyone had already faintly excluded Yi Shiwen from the younger generation. It was unfair to the others. Even so, in these 3,000 years, many people had made their own names. Young Kuan Peng, Yi Qianqian, Yi Wudi, and others had all stepped into the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. Martial Sect and Ji clans Ji Renwang and Ji Xianwang had also shown in the battlefield against the Heavenly Clan and stepped into the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. Fire Cloud Cave Shinong, who had been hidden for many years, had a female disciple who claimed to have obtained the inheritance of Earth Emperor Shinong. As soon as she came out, she was already invincible. Some people even saw her using the Shinong Cauldron to fight against strong enemies, which further confirmed the inheritance of Earth Emperor Shinong. The siblings Ling Fei and Ling Tian of the Fallen Angel clan and the other 8 royal clans also had strong newcomers. Yi Wudi and young Kuan Peng belonged to the system of the ancient heavenly court. There was also an ancient great demon among the demon race. It seemed that he had been sealed in the distant ancient times because of an accident. He was born a long time ago, but he wasn't very old. He was about the same age as Yi Wudi and the others. However, He didn't obey the jurisdiction of the ancient heavenly court. His strength had skyrocketed, and he had also reached the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. He had established his own faction and had become the lord of a region. He had fought with Yi Wudi and Young Kun Peng many times in order to fight for the leadership of the demon race and the right to speak. Everyone only knew that his origin was extraordinary. He was probably not inferior to Yi Wudi, who had obtained the inheritance of the demon emperor, and Young Kun Peng, who had obtained the inheritance of the demon master. Perhaps there was a super tycoon hidden behind him. His strength was tyrannical beyond imagination. There were outstanding people among the three races of the human, demon, and demon races who had reached the peak of the world. The other races weren't as lucky as the three races. They didn't have terrifying geniuses in large numbers. However, there were also many super geniuses who had entered the quasi-emperor realm. They obviously couldn't be compared with Yi Wudi and the others. However, they were also second-class super geniuses. Perhaps they wouldn't be far from entering the peak of the quasi-emperor realm in the future. There were also many super geniuses among the heavenly race's allied forces. Some of them were at the peak of their strength. Yi Shiwen had killed the Lord of 10,000 Treasures, the Lord of Nothingness, the Lord of Sky Origin, and the others. However, that was only a part of them. It was unknown how many top experts had been hiding under the guidance of the Emperor of the heavenly race. Originally, they had been hiding on the other side of the seal because they didn't have enough resources. However, after returning to the myriad world, they had endless resources. Their growth speed wasn't any slower than the peerless heroes of the allied forces. In fact, they were even faster. The saying that the heavenly race could contend against the myriad world with the strength of one race was absolutely true. In addition to the two camps, even the Netherworld Kingdom had an outstanding inheritor who walked between the heavens and the earth. He was known as the Lord of the Underworld. He was the leader of all the lords of the Netherworld in the Netherworld. No one had seen what he looked like because those who had seen him were all dead. Even the intelligence of all parties could only detect that he was a man. That was all. However, his strength was unquestionable. It was said that he had fought with some top experts of the older generation. He had won every one of them and left. There were masters on both sides. They weren't limited to one side. 3,000 years later, not only did the Netherworld Kingdom not decide which side to surrender to, but it was even more obvious that they were neutral. There had always been rumors that the supreme ruler of the Netherworld Kingdom, the Emperor of the Netherworld, was about to revive. With such a supermaster as his backing, neither the allied forces nor the heavenly race were willing to offend him. They didn't want to add a super helper to the opponent. The situation 3,000 years later hadn't stabilized. There was no saying who was stronger than who. On the contrary, it was even more chaotic. The situation was even more unclear. Both sides had placed high hopes on DNI and Yi Shiwen, but there were still no signs of success. Without that kind of overwhelming power, it was unrealistic for either side to suppress the other side. Under such circumstances, there was no Emperor-King level figure to suppress the world. This gave these invincible heroes the space to display their skills. It was different from Yi Shiwen thousands of years ago when he had left all his peers behind. Now, Yi Shiwen had become the dominant force. It had progressed to the stage where heroes were vying for supremacy in the world. These peerless heroes also embarked on the path of breaking through to the sovereign emperor realm one after another. Many old monsters who had lived for countless years exclaimed. It was as if they had seen the super golden era before the second war against the heavens. At that stage, the heavenly race had many emperor-level masters. Not to mention the allied forces, there were also many emperor-level masters. Since ancient times, there had never been such a powerful time. The battle between emperor-level masters was originally an extremely precious scene. However, it seemed to have become a standard in that era. After that, the heavens and the myriad worlds seemed to have exhausted their vitality and luck. There were some scattered people who achieved Tao. The most recent one was the Emperor Qin of the modern times. Now, it seemed that after countless years of recuperation, the heavens and the myriad worlds had regained their vitality. All kinds of geniuses were about to rush out like a volcano eruption. These invincible geniuses who were famous in this era, if any of them appeared in other eras, they might be like Yi Shiwen thousands of years ago. They might even have the qualifications to become emperor level. Therefore, in the opinion of many people, if these people were given the opportunity to grow, they might even achieve Tao. Moreover, not only one of them would achieve Tao. It would form a terrifying, chaotic battle between emperor-level masters. It would recreate the war against the heavens and the myriad worlds countless years ago. In that case, it would really be a super golden era. Even if it was just now, these young people had already overshadowed the limelight of those old monsters who were famous in the past. They were the strongest, and a storm was about to rise. And in such a situation, an amazing news came. Chapter 29:33. 3,000 years of golden era had nurtured countless geniuses. Perhaps not all of them were as outstanding as Yi Wudi and the others, but they had far surpassed any era in the past. These people could be regarded as outstanding in any previous era. They could be called the heroes of the generation. However, in this super golden era, they were all buried in the shadows of those heroes. Amidst the countless exchanges of information, a piece of news exploded in the universe. Someone had become an emperor. His aura of becoming an emperor shook the entire universe. Everyone could feel it. It was as if the world was changing. Countless rules were surging. Even the most remote places could faintly feel a pressure crushing their hearts. That terrifying power made people shiver, and an unprecedented sense of danger enveloped everyone in the transaction. Some creatures without much intelligence lay on the ground, trembling, not daring to get up. It was as if they were kneeling to the monarch of the world. Only some places protected by the emperor's array could resist this pressure. This was the heavenly Tao cheering for the new emperor. The monarch of heaven and earth should have this kind of majesty, this kind of treatment. Soon, when everyone was still guessing who the person was, a piece of news came from the Sky Clan. The real person who obtained the Tao was DNI, not Yi Shiwen or anyone else. This answer was within everyone's expectations. At the same time, many people were disappointed. In the end, Yi Shiwen was not the one who obtained the Tao. Among these people, there was no doubt that DNI was the most likely and had the highest chance of attaining the Tao. It wasn't only because he had the guidance and inheritance of the emperor. Most importantly, he had the opportunity to become an emperor that Yi Shiwen didn't have. In this aspect, no one could compare with him. Even so, many people were still looking forward to it. Perhaps Yi Shiwen still had a chance. Compared to others, Yi Shiwen's chance was undoubtedly much higher. Others had just begun to break through to the emperor realm, but Yi Shiwen had already begun to break through to the emperor realm. Although it was much shorter than those old monsters, he was recognized as the second person who had the possibility of obtaining the Tao besides DNI. However, DNI was still one step ahead of them. Everyone sighed and began to panic. The first monarch appeared in the celestial race. Everything was like a domino collapsing. After the DNI became an emperor, he would be able to break the seal. At that time, even more Tian clan emperor monarchs would pass through the seal and come to the myriad heavens. At that time, a few imperial monarchs would join forces, and the entire universe would fall into their hands. No one would be able to stop the celestial race's attack. Therefore, just the fact that the Arch-Defiant had attained the Tao was not enough to make them despair. What truly made them despair was the fact that many imperial emperors would cross realms in the future, causing the entire universe to fall into their hands. After receiving the news that DNI had obtained the Tao, many of the originally wavering races all fell at the feet of the Tian clan, fighting to be the first, afraid that if they were too late, they would be crushed to death by the Tian clan. For a time, the Tian clan's momentum soared, and the momentum of the various allied armies plummeted. Even the core of the three races, the human, demon, and demon races, couldn't help but feel a little pompous when facing an unfathomable existence like the celestial race's emperor monarch. Emperor lords were too powerful. Even if they had methods to restrain emperor lords, they could only restrain them. They couldn't really deal with them. For a time, everyone in the universe was in a state of panic. The Tian clan issued a declaration that those who submit to me will prosper, and those who oppose me will perish. They demanded that the allied armies of the various races surrender. Otherwise, once they were breached, there would be no survivors. Under this declaration, there were indeed many people who were secretly colluding with the Tian clan. Although integrity was important, it was not as important as the survival of the race and forces. After the Arch Defiant attained the Tao, the Tian clan regained their high and mighty attitude. It was as if they were going to repeat the situation before the first war against the heavens and recreate the glory of that time. Moreover, the Tian clan had issued a must-kill list, asking the allied armies of the various races to hand over the people on the list. Among them, the first one was Yi Shiwen, who had repeatedly opposed the Tian clan, followed by the lord of the ancient heavenly court, Yi Wudi, and many other famous young talents. This time, the Tian clan planned to capture all the young talents of the various races in one fell swoop. Those top experts of the older generation were also asked to commit suicide in order to preserve the race. Such a race and force, old and young, would all be captured in one fell swoop. Even if they survived, there would be no hope. After obtaining this must-kill list, many people were ready to make a move. In many people's opinion, if these people's sacrifices could be exchanged for their survival, then it would be worth it. After all, it was better to die than to die. If they still couldn't agree to the Tian clan's request, then when the Tian clan's many emperor lords crossed over, they would really trample the world. Some people with weak wills began to clamor for the people on the list to voluntarily accept death. However, there were also many people who were furious, because those on the list were all the most outstanding elites of their teachers or sections. It was unknown how many years it would take for such an elite to appear, but they were going to die just like that. No one was willing. Because of this, many people thought back to the endless dark times before the first war against the heavens. The Tian clan that rose up first suppressed the 10,000 worlds, and all the outstanding talents either joined the Tian clan as their lackeys, or were captured and tortured to death. In those countless dark years, it was unknown how many clan elders voluntarily walked into the Tian clan's butcher knife. For the survival of their clan, after their cultivation reached a certain level, they entered the Tian clan's cage. Some of the bigger threats were killed on the spot, and the smaller threats were imprisoned, never to see the light of day again. They used their flesh and blood and magic power to contribute to the rise of the Tian clan. Of course, they were unwilling, but once they refused, they would immediately welcome the Tian clan's army. Wherever the iron hooves passed, everything would turn into nothingness, and their clan would be exterminated, disappearing from the 10,000 worlds. Even so, every once in a while, their clan would have to contribute their most valiant warriors to the void to fight in an unknown direction. No one knew where it was, and none of these people could survive in the end. Their clan struggled painfully under the rule of the Tian clan from generation to generation. Under the rule of the Tian clan, everyone lived an incomparably sullen life. It was a dark and chaotic time. It was engraved in the blood of every race. It could be forgotten, but at this point, everyone suddenly remembered it. That period of time was simply too dark. No one wanted to return to those days, especially when the people in charge were the top experts of the various races. They were the targets that the Tian clan had to kill. Even if everyone surrendered, they would not surrender. Otherwise, they would die without a burial ground. Fight. Fight to the death. Even if we fight to the last man, our human clan will never retreat. In the face of the arrogant declaration of the Tian clan, the Ji family, the Shinnon clan, and the martial sect, the three great emperors' inheritances all spoke together and responded forcefully. There was no room for retreat. Without a doubt, once the Tian clan regained control of the world, the emperor's inheritances would definitely be a thorn in their side. They would be the first targets to be eradicated. Others could retreat. Everyone could retreat, but they could not retreat. Soon, the two giants, the Demon Clan and the Monster Clan, also spoke, especially the Emperor's inheritances. They all faced it head-on, leaving no room for others to retreat. The Tian clan didn't seem to care at all. Even if they didn't surrender, it would only delay their death a little. They would die sooner or later. They had absolute confidence in themselves, so they didn't have the slightest thought of compromising. The allied forces of the various races were extremely sullen, but at the same time, they were also very hot-blooded. Everyone was forced to a dead end. There were even valiant warriors from all over the world who went to assassinate DNI with unparalleled methods. However, the result was within their expectations. Even though they had methods to restrain the Emperor, they still failed. They could only restrain the Emperor when they were defending. Taking the initiative to attack an Emperor was truly courting death. The actions of these valiant warriors completely angered the Tian clan. The Tian clan attacked again and again, directly wiping out several strongholds of the allied forces of the various races. Blood flowed like rivers and corpses piled up like mountains. Who knew how many hundreds of millions of experts from the allied forces of the various races were all annihilated under the iron hooves of the Tian clan? No matter how amazing the defense was, it couldn't withstand a single blow from DNI. After he broke the defensive formation, the iron hooves of the Tian clan rushed in and trampled the stronghold. Countless experts died tragically, and only a few managed to escape. Because DNI had sealed the space, no one could leave through the spatial formation. In the end, it wasn't the Tian clan who attacked at all, but the vassals of the Tian clan. After betraying the allied forces of the various races, their vassals were especially fierce. They were also trying to show their usefulness to the Tian clan and not be killed. The world was sad. The atmosphere was extremely tense. Everyone knew that it was only a matter of time before the invasion of the Tian clan. After DNI consolidated his cultivation, he would attack. With him as the arrowhead, even the headquarters of the allied forces of the various races would be in danger of being annihilated. Although there were many methods left behind by the Emperor back then, without the Emperor there, they could only use a tenth of their power. Does God really love the Tian clan so much that he wants us to become slaves of the Tian clan again and crawl under their feet? God, are you really going to give up on us? Why is this happening? All over the world, there was a cry of sorrow. Chapter 29:34. Everyone was trembling. It was as if they had seen the return of the heavenly clan in its heyday. It was so terrifying. Everyone could not help but feel terrified when they thought of the most serious and terrifying consequences. The previous two wars of resistance against the heavens were too tragic, but what was even more terrifying than the most tragic war was the endless dark years before the first war of resistance against the heavens. No one wanted to return to those days. All of a sudden, the entire myriad heavens and realms were in a state of turmoil. Everyone knew that after DNI attained the Tao, he was still consolidating and growing stronger. When the army of the Heaven Clan would make their move would depend on when he made his move. This kind of waiting for death was the most torturous. Some people flocked to surrender to the Heavenly Clan, and some were silently preparing for the real final battle was about to come. At this time, no one expected that Yi Shiwen, who was originally in seclusion and had not seen anyone for 3,000 years, would suddenly come out. The Secret Alliance did not try to hide this news, so it quickly spread throughout the heavens and realms. Everyone could not understand why he chose to come out at this time. What was he trying to do? The Heavenly Clan even laughed at him. He had probably accepted his fate and knew that he would definitely not be able to attain Tao and become an emperor, so he came out of seclusion and prepared to die in the end. In this regard, the Heavenly Clan laughed at him, but the allied forces were completely silent, because in their opinion, there was probably only one possibility. Otherwise, why would Yi Shiwen choose to come out at this time? It was probably because he was really planning to fight to the death. However, after Yi Shiwen came out of seclusion, the first thing he did was to summon the young heroes of the world and hold a truth discussion conference. For a time, there was a lot of discussion in the heavens and realms. The Truth Discussion Conference was already in such a situation, and he still had the mood to sit down and discuss Tao. This was something that many people had never expected. No one knew what he was up to. Yi Shiwen had sent invitations to many young heroes who had become famous in the last 3,000 years. Many people didn't respect Yi Shiwen very much. In fact, many people believe that Yi Shiwen had been in the limelight in the past because he hadn't bumped into them. As the saying goes, when there is no tiger in the mountain, the monkey becomes the king. However, Yi Shiwen had the title of the top person in the world for such a long time after all. Before DNI achieved Dao, no one dared to say that they could defeat Yi Shiwen. Therefore, when he sent the invitation, whether it was out of respect, curiosity to see what Yi Shiwen was like, or other purposes, they all agreed to come. Moreover, there were many people who wanted to know what kind of method this former #1 person would use to deal with the rise of the Tian clan. Therefore, many people who didn't receive an invitation also moved upon hearing the news. Originally, there were only 50 people on Yi Shiwen's invitation list. In any case, with Yi Shiwen's identity and status, there were not many people who were qualified to enter his eyes, even in the super golden era where there were many masters. But in reality, there were 1,000 times more people coming here without permission, and there were even more people on the way. Suddenly, the entire Secret Alliance was in an uproar. The Secret Alliance hadn't been so lively for a long time because Yi Shiwen was in closed-door training. Especially after the opening of the Golden Era, many super geniuses appeared in every family, and the eyes of all the worlds were not only focused on Yi Shiwen. Now that Yi Shiwen suddenly came out of closed-door training, he attracted so many supermasters, which also made many people secretly sigh. No matter how many people said that they looked down on Yi Shiwen, felt that when there was no tiger in the mountain, the monkey became the king, and felt that his reputation did not match his reality, but just by looking at the fact that so many famous super geniuses were invited to the Truth Discussion Conference, they knew that his influence was still there. No matter whether they admitted it or not, the power and reputation of the world's #1 person in the past 3,000 years had not decreased. Silence did not mean that he had declined, but he was accumulating his foundation. 3,000 years ago, there were still many people who were disdainful of Yi Shiwen's title of the world's #1 person. But now, not many people dared to say anything. It seemed that they had already acquiesced. Things like foundation were like this, developing bit by bit. Yi Shiwen held the Truth Discussion Conference, and the first to respond was the ancient heavenly court. Yi Shiwen and Yi Wudi's young Kuan Peng had a very good relationship, and this was already known to everyone. As they had already ascended to a high position, and their strength was even more at the peak of the world, these things had become even more popular topics of discussion. Then, Ji Renwang, Ji Xianwang, and others of the Heaven Realm immediately agreed. In addition, Ling Tian of the Fallen Angel clan also immediately agreed. Ling Fei, who was originally rumored to have an ambiguous relationship with Yi Shiwen, didn't come because she was in closed-door training. Then the other royal families of the demon race, the Dragon Island, the ancient Phoenix Realm, and so on, all the giants who were either on good terms with Yi Shiwen or had grievances with Yi Shiwen also responded at this time. This made the forces of the Celestial Clan, who were originally waiting to watch a good show and see Yi Shiwen as a joke, even more dumbfounded. They never expected that after 3,000 years, Yi Shiwen's influence didn't retreat, but increased instead. 3,000 years' time was not long, but it was not short either. Those who had just risen might not know how awe-inspiring Yi Shiwen was in the past, but the most mainstream top masters in the world now had experienced the incident of Yi Shiwen forcibly breaking into the Celestial Clan's camp. He alone beat the Celestial Clan to the point that they couldn't fight back, and could only defend the Celestial Clan's camp. Later, he even forced the Celestial Clan to withdraw their forces. Since ancient times, only he had done it. These things continued to ferment in the past 3,000 years, and he continued to add points. If it wasn't for the Inverse Emperor's enlightenment to save the situation, the Celestial Clan wouldn't be able to raise their heads under Yi Shiwen's suppression. Many people were wringing their wrists and sighing. In terms of strength and foundation, Yi Shiwen had it all. The only thing he lacked was the opportunity to attain enlightenment. It would be great if the opportunity to attain enlightenment fell into Yi Shiwen's hands. In any case, it was much better than being under the Celestial Clan's hands. Among those who had risen in the world, many of them were the group of people who had personally experienced the storm on the Kurfürst Road. Thinking of this, They were especially wringing their wrists and sighing. How could the world be blinded by the opportunity to become an emperor? But now that things had come to this, there was no other way. Yi Shiwen's Truth Discussion Conference set off a shocking wave, but he himself didn't have the slightest change. He no longer cultivated in seclusion, but entered an extremely leisurely state. Every day, he drank tea, looked around, and walked around. If one didn't look at his strength, they would even think that he was just a new disciple of the Hidden Alliance. Of course, most of the time was spent with his family. Yi Shiwen had been in seclusion for thousands of years, even tens of thousands of years. There was very little time for him to accompany his family, so he naturally had to seize the time to accompany them. A few days later, the first batch of guests arrived. They were none other than Yi Wudi and young Kuan Peng, who were currently the lord of the ancient heavenly court and the master of myriad demons. If it was said that their sudden rise to high positions was due to the legacy of their predecessors, then now they truly had such strength and qualifications. No one dared to doubt that even if they weren't Emperor Lords, they were one of the strongest people under the Emperor Lords. On a flat ground on a beautiful mountain peak, Yi Shiwen and the other two were lying on the grass. The spirit beasts that were caught from an unknown place were roasted by the three of them. The fragrance assailed their nostrils, and the fine wine that had been buried underground for thousands of years was opened up. For a time, the aroma of barbecue and fine wine wandered at the tip of their noses. The three of them ate and drank to their heart's content, as if they had returned to the past. Now that they thought about it, they were still young at that time. They didn't have so many troubles. Ha ha ha. This reminds me of the time when I was in Yuan school. You little brat, relying on the fact that I was a true disciple, you caught the spirit beasts of other people's hilltop and roasted them and ate them. If I hadn't taken care of the aftermath for you, you would have been beaten to death. Yi Shiwen laughed and said while lying on the grass, not wanting to think about anything. That was because I let them have it easy. Even if they had 10 lives, they wouldn't be enough for me to kill. Yi Wudi naturally said, unwilling to be outdone. Yi Shiwen just curled his lips in disdain. He naturally saw how weak Yi Wudi was back then. Yi Wudi's strength was inferior to Yi Shiwen's back then. Of course, Yi Wudi was still inferior to Yi Shiwen now. And you don't laugh. You've been a foodie since you were young. You really eat everything and are not picky about anything. Qinbai looked at young Kuan Peng and couldn't help but feel angry and amused. Yi Shiwen thought that he was a prodigal, but compared to young Kuan Peng, there was no comparison at all. That guy's strength was completely based on the accumulation of resources. There were no bottlenecks in cultivation at all. As long as the resources kept up, his cultivation would rise rapidly. Even Yi Wudi was inferior to him. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but sigh. There really was such a thing as a genius and a monster in this world. Although he was also called a genius and a monster, outsiders didn't know much about him. He had many fortuitous encounters to achieve what he had today, and he also had the help of the mysterious space. Otherwise, how could he be compared to these geniuses? Huh? I remember. You almost angered him to death. Yi Wudi laughed. Clearly, the memory of young Kuan Peng, who was a foodie, was still fresh. Ever since I knew him, he was a prodigal. However, no matter how much he lost, he couldn't eat as much as you. Oh my, I almost died of laughter. I can only eat a little. Young Kuan Peng said very innocently. This was his weakness. There was nothing more to say. By the way, you still have the leisure to hold a Tao discussion. What do you want? Yi Wudi couldn't help but ask after teasing young Kuan Peng. What else can I want? I want to kill DNI. Chapter 29:35. What else can I do? I want to kill DNI. Yi Shiwen's expression was calm when he said this. It was as if he was talking about something unimportant like what to eat for dinner. If others heard this, they would probably faint. Those who didn't know would think that he was planning to kill some insignificant person. That was DNI, the first emperor in the world after Emperor Qin. What kind of existence was an emperor? It was the greatest existence since ancient times. Although DNI had some tricks to become an emperor, it was a completely different matter when he really stepped into the emperor realm. A quasi-emperor wanting to kill an emperor was completely crazy. Or was he completely crazy? Those who didn't know would think that he was stimulated by something. Or rather, he was driven crazy by the great power of the heavenly race. That was why he had such an idea. However, the people here were all Yi Shiwen's trusted brothers. Their thinking circuits had long been modified by Yi Shiwen. The first reaction in their minds wasn't that Yi Shiwen was crazy, but rather, did he really intend to do this? What was he planning to do? That's an emperor. What are you going to do? Young Kuan Peng asked without hesitation. What am I going to do? Just say it. That kid has been very arrogant recently. Damn, I want to kill him too. Yi Wudi flipped over and said, but it's not that easy to kill him. Although that kid is using tricks, he is an emperor after all. Young Kuan Peng also became serious. If there were others watching here, they would probably not know whether to laugh or cry. Yi Shiwen was already crazy. As a quasi-emperor, he wanted to kill an emperor, but these two were actually discussing the feasibility of it seriously. If we can lure him to our heavenly court and activate the heavenly cycle star formation with a few Dao tools to suppress the formation, we can toy with him to death. Even if we can't kill him, we can still suppress him for thousands of years. Yi Wudi touched his chin and began to seriously consider. Of course, Yi Wudi had such confidence. The ancient heavenly court had more than one emperor. Naturally, they had methods and confidence that other emperors' inheritances did not have. Probably only the emperor clan, the Ji family, could suppress the ancient heavenly court. Even though they had been in decline for many years, many of their foundations were still not visible to outsiders. Especially after Yi Wudi's painstaking efforts for so many years, he had already recovered some of his former glory. He's not that stupid. That kid is too smart. He has failed several times to kill him. How can he go to the heavenly court now? Young Kuan Peng shook his head. This idea was still not realistic. A single monarch was not enough to make the myriad worlds panic to such an extent. After all, there were still some monarchs who had inherited some methods to counter the monarchs. Even if they had to pay a heavy price, they could still threaten the monarchs. What truly made them despair was that there were many Tian clan monarchs on the other side of the seal. Once they broke through the seal and collectively crossed over, that would truly change the heavens. Chin, do it. This kid is more than I am. Chin it. He is still too. He is too early to become an emperor. Is you. Yin Chun as I will him. I, Yi, Di, Tian, Dion should I say. He, Tian as I said. Yi, Tian, I Tian as I have say. If his words were to be spread, it would definitely attract the attention of countless people. Even those old monsters at the peak of the Emperor stage who had broken through to the Emperor's realm for millions of years did not dare to say that they were confident. How can you be so sure? Yi Shiwen asked. He was also a little curious. The world is different now, Yi Wudi said. Actually, at our level, we might not be worse than those ancient emperors before they achieved the Tao, especially you. Even if you count all those ancient emperors, I'm afraid there aren't many who can compare to you. But why is it that so many people achieved the Tao in the past, but after so many years, no one has been able to? Because the heavens do not allow it. There is a shackle that locks everyone. Yi Wudi said. Seeing that the two of them were looking at him strangely, he quickly said, Don't look at me. I didn't say it. The demon emperor said it. The reason why I and some others were sealed until this generation is because the shackle of the heavens will be loosened in this generation. This is what the demon emperor calculated with the river chart and the book of the Luo. River chart and the book of the Luo? The legendary river chart and the book of the Luo that can calculate all the mysteries of heaven? Yi Shiwen's eyes immediately lit up. Yes, in order to calculate this, even a powerful person like the Demon Emperor spent millions of years of martial power. How can it be so easy to pry into the mysteries of heaven? Yi Wudi nodded and said, All these years, my cultivation has gradually increased, and I've also begun to unlock many of the ancient heavenly court's secret manuals. I've seen many ancient secrets. The secret manuals left behind by the Demon Emperor mentioned that although the number of sovereign emperors in the world is not fixed, there is a limit to how much the world can accommodate. When this limit is exceeded, He will consciously control the number of sovereign emperors and suppress the creation of sovereign emperors. Yi Shiwen suddenly understood. If this was the control of the heavens, then it could be explained. But thinking about it, it was also true. It was already very terrifying to have 10 emperors in the world at the same time. If 100 or 200 emperors were in the world at the same time, the heavens would be destroyed 8 or 10 times over. Especially when the emperors took action, destroying the world would be like playing a game. Who could withstand such destruction? Now, apart from D and I, the only Emperor Ming who still exists is probably Emperor Ming. The others are either sealed, exiled, gone, or dead. Compared to the time when there were many emperors, they are not on the same level. The world will also unconsciously loosen its control. When that time comes, the world will rise again and the emperors will rule the world. Although I don't know who will become the emperor, it will be nothing compared to the desolation we are experiencing now. Yi Wudi said, now is the end of the confinement period. At most, there will be 10,000 years left. Everything will change. Obviously, the heavenly race also knows this, so they will not give us 10,000 years. When the heavenly race rules the world, all the races will not have a chance to rise again. Even if there is another emperor, it will appear in the heavenly race, not among the races. It was a race against time. It was truly a race against time. Perhaps many people did not expect that there was such a plot behind all this. The world was never fair, and the one with the most schemes would win. That's not right. After the Second War of Resistance, there were still many emperors who became emperors. Young Kuan-pung said, obviously thinking of something. Those were all tricks, and they were more or less related to the opportunity to become emperors on the Kurfürst Road. Those who used tricks would eventually pay the price. Although I don't know how the person who set up the Kurfürst Road did it, there must be a huge hidden danger. During the confinement period, only the Qin emperor managed to tear apart the confinement of the heavenly way and become an emperor with his own strength. Therefore, he is very strong, very strong. So many emperors in history, he is ranked among the top. Yi Wudi said, what a pity. If you could become an emperor during the imprisonment period, then you might be able to replicate the miracle of the Qin emperor again. That guy who relied on the opportunity to become an emperor would definitely not be your match. The Great Tao was 50, and the Heavenly Evolution was 49. After all, there was a chance of survival, and everything would not be destroyed. It's a pity. Time waits for no man. Yi Wudi said unwillingly. So, what do you plan to do? How do you kill him? He racked his brains, but he still couldn't figure out how to kill an emperor as a quasi-emperor. I can attract the great tribulation of the emperor at any time, Yi Shiwen said. What? Yi Wudi and young Kuan-pung were shocked and jumped up, because they seemed to have heard the most incredible thing. Do you really think that I haven't done anything in the past 3,000 years? Yi Shiwen said lightly. I obtained a part of the inheritance of the Great Star Emperor before, so in fact, I have already reached that boundary. During this period of time, I have been preparing for the Great Tribulation. The more I reach that realm, the more I can feel that the Great Tribulation is not far away. 1,000 years ago, I tried my best to suppress my cultivation so that I would not attract the Great Tribulation prematurely. This time, when I came out of seclusion, it was only one of the reasons. The most important thing is that I am ready. Since you are ready, why don't you go through the Great Tribulation? Young Kuan-pung asked with a little doubt. Stupid. With his sinister character, he can obviously go through the Great Tribulation, but he doesn't go through it. What else can he do? It is most likely because of that guy, Emperor and I, Yi Wudi said with a smile. Yi Shiwen suddenly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He really didn't know whether Yi Wudi knew him best, or that this guy was thinking the same thing as him. Sort of. If I go through the Great Tribulation now, with the character of Emperor and I, and the conservative thoughts of some of the old sects in the Tian clan, they will definitely not let Emperor and I fight with me. Once the Emperor and the Emperor meet, the result will definitely be earth-shattering. Yi Shiwen said, if Emperor and I hides, with so many tricks left by the previous Emperor of the Tian clan, it will be extremely difficult for me to kill him. If he is the only Emperor in the Tian clan, it will be good. and I don't have to take such a risk. However, if he calmly waits for 1,000 years, breaks the seal, and the other emperors of the Tian clan cross the seal, then we will have no hope at all. So before that, I must find a way to lure him out. Yi Shiwen said seriously. Now that I have held this truth discussion conference on the surface, it is for the truth discussion conference, but in fact, it is to attract him here. I have fought with him many times, and I have won more than lost. He will definitely be unwilling and come to kill me. Will anyone think that there is any risk for an emperor to kill a quasi-emperor? Even the most stubborn and conservative old antiques in the Tian clan will not stop him. At that time, it will be time for us to really fight back. Chapter 29:36. Yi Wudi and young Kuan-Peng's eyes widened. No matter how they thought about it, they never thought that there would be such a reason. It was really too crazy. Seeing that Yi Shiwen was planning to kill a sovereign emperor with a serious look on his face, both of them felt that it was completely unreal. Is he really going to kill a sovereign emperor? Is he just going to kill a random person on the roadside? Yi Shiwen's plan made the two people who trusted Yi Shiwen the most feel like they were going to go crazy. But even so, you have to understand one thing. No matter what, you haven't really become an emperor yet. So here's the problem. Yi Wudi said slowly. How can you guarantee that you won't be killed during the heavenly tribulation? In any case, you are only a quasi-emperor. I'm afraid you can't stop the inverse emperor's surprise attack. The surprise attack of an emperor could destroy a world with one blow. How to stop such a terrifying, invincible existence was the key to this plan. Yes, this is the key point. This is the core of today's question. Yi Shiwen faintly said, how can we resist the sneak attack of an emperor-level expert? If it was on the side of the heavenly court, there would be a way to stop him. But here, it's hard to say. Yi Wudi shook his head and said, I've been preparing for this all these years. In the past 3,000 years, my original body has been cultivating, but my spirit incarnation has been outside. I have read a lot of information. I have even been to the martial arts sect. I found out that during the Second Anti-Heaven War, in order to kill an emperor of the heavenly clan, the allied forces of the various clans had set up a 5-yuan heaven punishment formation. 5 emperors were scattered in different directions, and even a real emperor could be killed quickly. Yi Shiwen said faintly, but there must be 5 emperors. Where can we find 5 emperors for you? With so many emperors, the inverse emperor would have been killed long ago. Yi Wudi couldn't help but complain. Although we don't have 5 emperors, we don't have to kill the inverse emperor with a 5-yuan heaven punishment formation. We just need to stop him. There are other ways. Although we can't find 5 emperors, we can get 5 Dao weapons. Yi Shiwen said, 5 Dao artifacts will definitely be enough. TCH, only you would dare to say something like that. Yi Wudi said, feeling somewhat speechless. 5 Dao artifacts. Any Dao artifact, even if it appeared in the inheritance of an emperor lord, would be extremely precious, let alone 5 Dao artifacts. It was not easy to gather all 5 Dao artifacts. It could even be said to be an impossible task. That was because it was impossible for a sovereign lord's legacy to lend a Dao artifact to another sovereign lord's legacy. This was especially true for other sovereign lords' legacies. It was too dangerous, and it was possible that the sovereign lord would not be able to return. However, Yi Shiwen was different. He did not have the inheritance of an emperor, but he had such strength. He was the most unique. Moreover, everyone knew that he had 2 complete Dao tools on him. In this case, the quest was already 2/5 complete. All right, no problem. I've also brought the Demon Emperor's Bell. It should be able to help you, right? Yi Wudi said, count me in. I also have the Yin-Yang 2 worlds diagram with me. Young Kuan-Peng said with a smile. Look, there are 4 of them. Yi Shiwen said with a smile. There is one more. The rest will not be so easy. You can also use the devil warship to block them. Yi Wudi said, no, the devil warship is damaged after all. Although it is powerful, it can easily become a fatal flaw in the 5-yuan heaven punishment Great Array. If the inverse emperor attacks this weakness, then the Great Array is very likely to be broken. Yi Shiwen shook his head and said, rejecting this option. Otherwise, you won't borrow it from the martial sect. Although the martial sect has always supported you, they may not be willing to help at this time. Yi Wudi said. Yi Shiwen nodded. Although his relationship with the martial sect was very good, there was still a gap between them. He was not like Yi Wudi and young Kuan Peng, who wholeheartedly helped him. As long as he asked, they would have no problem climbing a mountain of swords or plunging into a sea of flames. I don't expect the martial sect to lend me their Dao tools, but I have already sent someone to contact them and ask them to help me block the other Dao tools of the Tian clan. Yi Shiwen said. To deal with the Inverse Emperor alone, it would consume a total of 5 Dao tools. However, if the Dao tools of the other Tian clan were included, then the problem would become more serious and complicated. Who is the last one? Young Kuan Peng could not help but ask. Ming Han, she has come out. She will bring the phoenix robe to help me. Yi Shiwen said. Oh, it is her. She has finally come out. This closed-door training is really long. I don't know what benefits she has obtained. Yi Wudi nodded. If it was Hua Ming Han, then there was no need to explain anything. However, it is not enough to just have the Dao tools. You also need 5 experts of similar level. Otherwise, you will not be able to stop the Inverse Emperor. Yu Qianqian Ming Han, Yimo, 5 peak quasi-emperors plus 5 Dao tools. I think no one in this world can stop an ID if such a lineup can't stop him. He has just become an emperor. So, he shouldn't be that strong yet. Yi Shiwen slowly said. He has just become an emperor. So, you've thought everything through. Yi Wudi said. There is nothing to say. When the time comes, just say it. However, I am not familiar with the 5 yuan punishing heaven formation, so I need to familiarize myself with it in advance. Well, I have engraved the 5 yuan punishing heaven formation in the jade slip. It should not be difficult for you to take a look. I will give you some time. Yi Shiwen's palm flew, and the jade slip turned into 2 rays of light and flew into the hands of Yi Wudi and young Kuan Peng. The 2 of them began to look at it without any hesitation. No matter how confident they were, or how determined they were to help Yi Shiwen, he was, after all, the most terrifying expert in the world. In today's world, no one could defeat him except Ming Di. They could look down on the opponent strategically, but they had to pay attention to the tactics. Haha, no problem. Just leave it to me. I feel my blood boiling just thinking about it. I've never done something like this in my life, as a quasi-emperor against an emperor. I think it might be the last time in my life. I must do it with a bang. Yi Wudi finished reading very quickly. Ha, no problem. Leave it to me. Although the 5 yuan punishing heaven formation was extremely complicated and involved many principles of formations, for experts like them, they only needed to look at it once to remember it all in their minds. Everything will have to wait for the day of the conference. Yi Shiwen murmured. His expression was still calm, but the sharp light in his eyes could not be hidden and burst out. Because of Yi Shiwen's conference, the Hidden Alliance began to get busy. Although Yi Shiwen did not choose the venue of the conference in the Hidden Alliance as the host, the Hidden Alliance still had to send many disciples to set up the venue and entertain the experts who came from all sides. Everyone in the Hidden Alliance was puzzled. Why did the leader of the Hidden Alliance not choose the Hidden Valley for such a grand event? However, Yi Shiwen's prestige was very high at this time. Even if some people were a little puzzled, no one dared to say anything on this issue. Soon, experts arrived one after another, which greatly widened the horizons of the Hidden Alliance's disciples who went to welcome the guests. Although the Hidden Alliance had been developing nonstop for 3,000 years, it was still relatively weak. In these 3,000 years, apart from the original Hidden King, Yi Mo, and Yi Qianqian, there were also a few people who had truly stepped into the quasi-emperor realm. However, there was still a huge gap compared to the elites and top experts of the myriad worlds. However, those who came to watch the ceremony did not dare to be presumptuous. Although these Hidden Alliance's disciples were insignificant compared to them, Yi Shiwen was not someone they could afford to provoke. There were many people who disliked Yi Shiwen, but no one dared to deny his strength. Even the most arrogant and conceited person did not dare to say that he could easily take down Yi Shiwen. In Yi Shiwen's territory, they naturally had to give Yi Shiwen enough face. Especially in these 3,000 years, Many super experts who had never appeared before had appeared. Many people had never seen Yi Shiwen before. Those who were weak or slightly weaker had already arrived in advance and sat in the special space that had just been opened up. Although these people did not have invitations, the Hidden Alliance did not dare to really drive them away. They could only serve them well one by one. As the time of the Truth Discussion Conference was getting closer and closer, more and more experts had arrived. The situation of many quasi-emperors had begun to appear. However, these big shots who could summon the wind and summon the rain in the myriad worlds were well-behaved here. Although the quasi-emperors were strong, they were not enough in front of Yi Shiwen. Even if Yi Shiwen did not make a move, Yi Mo and Yi Qianqian, who had killed countless people to establish their prestige in these years, were not ordinary people. How would they dare to be presumptuous? As more and more experts arrived, the voices of discussion also became more and more intense. Especially those famous young experts had become the focus of everyone's discussion. In particular, the number of people who would come to give face to Yi Shiwen had also become the focus of speculation. Some people had even opened a gambling house to see how many people would come. Needless to say, many people really had the money to bet. How many people do you think will come this time? There are so many young Supreme Experts. No one knows how many experts have appeared in this super golden era. There should be a lot of people. Although Yi Shiwen's reputation as the former #1 person is no longer valuable, his prestige is still there. He might even be more famous than Yi Shiwen. Chapter 29:37. Too many big shots have appeared in recent years. Any one of them was not inferior to any of them in the mythological era. Not to mention, all of them are outstanding geniuses now. I'm afraid that some people are not convinced by Yi Shiwen. Not convinced? Then let them go and have a look at the heavenly race's main camp. Let's see whether they can survive or not. However, some people felt indignant. After all, Yi Shiwen's battle achievements had been achieved through fighting. He hadn't been flattered by anyone. After all, he had become the world's most powerful expert by killing the previous world's most powerful expert. So, he hadn't been bragging about himself. But it's really hard to say. After all, their cultivation has reached the limit. No matter how strong Yi Shiwen is, can he surpass the quasi-emperor realm? Moreover, Yi Shiwen had only reached the peak 3,000 years earlier than them. How big a gap of 3,000 years can be? Everything is full of unknowns. There are probably not many people who can go against Yi Shiwen. The Dark King of the Dark Kingdom is one of them. The Dark King has traveled all over the world and has yet to meet a worthy opponent. It's rare for a descendant of the Dark Kingdom to be born. Moreover, he is so high profile. If he isn't powerful, then he wouldn't be flattered by so many people. That's true. He is really powerful. However, I guess he won't dare to come. I think more than 1 or 2 people know about the grudge between Yi Shiwen and the Dark Kingdom. The Dark Kingdom has released the news that they will kill Yi Shiwen. How can Yi Shiwen not kill the disciples of the Dark Kingdom when he sees them? Once they meet, it will inevitably be another tragic battle. Apart from him, there are also a few outstanding big shots from several big devil clans. Shin Nong of the Human Clan, Ji Xianhuang of the Emperor Clan, Jiren Wang of the Martial Great Sect, Yi Wudi of the Demon Race, and the descendant of the Demon Master, Kun Peng. So many experts have gathered together. I can't help but feel my blood boiling. Yes, only Yi Shiwen has such rallying power. Apart from him, who else can make these heaven-warping geniuses come willingly? Soon, the first genius who was truly famous in the world appeared. He was dressed in a green robe and looked peerless. The arrival of this person made the world silent. He was more powerful than thousands of people. I didn't expect it to be him. No one knows who he is. It is said that he is a god worshipped by a certain world. Everyone thinks that he is a tree god, but no one knows what tree his body is. Some guessed that it might be a world tree, while others said that it is an ancient tree of life. He is so powerful. Someone revealed the identity of the newcomer, causing a commotion among the crowd. It was rare for experts to appear in the plant element, but once they did, they would definitely be super experts. Whether it was the world tree or the ancient tree of life, they were both unimaginably powerful and mystical trees. It was possible that they had existed since the creation of the world. Such an expert did not appear earlier or later, but appeared at this moment. It seemed to confirm the theory of a super golden era. There were also people who said that he had been sleeping since ancient times and only started to cultivate in the current era. In short, he was very strong. After the tree god, very quickly, the second peerless great figure arrived. This time, it was the supreme youth of the human race, Ji Xianhuang. He represented the Emperor clan, the Ji family. Originally, with his own identity and the identity of the Emperor clan, he should not have come so early. However, he could not wait any longer and directly came first. If it was said that he and Yi Shiwen were at the same starting line in the past, or even stronger than Yi Shiwen, then from thousands of years ago, he had already fallen far behind Yi Shiwen. It was fine if he could not compare to Ji Renwang. After all, he was still a disciple of the Ji family. But what was so special about Yi Shiwen? He could not wait to fight with Yi Shiwen and let everyone see that he had not spent these thousands of years in vain. After Ji Xianhuang messed up the order, many people no longer had any order. Ji Renwang arrived soon after and was quickly welcomed. Ji Renwang and Yi Shiwen had fought side by side in the past. Not to mention, Martial Great Master had helped Yi Shiwen several times, so it was reasonable for him to take the seat of honor. At this moment, Yimo finally appeared. These heavyweight experts weren't people that ordinary people could suppress. Only his presence could suppress them. After Ji Renwang, another incomparably ugly man walked over. His arrival made everyone feel as if they were in a demonic land. Azura, it's him. I didn't expect him to give Yi Shiwen face. Didn't they say that he was born from the Azura demon lord's blood essence and was born as a god? He is invincible and does not put anyone in his eyes. He is also the only Azura tribe member who dares to call himself Azura. After Azura arrived, he also joined the seats at the top. There were not many seats, but not everyone could sit on them. Those who dared to sit on them naturally had their own strength and confidence. Fallen Angel Clan's Ling Tian has arrived. Ling Tian's arrival quickly attracted the attention of countless people. This was because compared to Azura who had just arrived, one was so handsome that he had no friends, and the other was so ugly that he had no friends. They were like two completely different extremes. The two of them clearly did not see eye to eye. Their seats were also far away from each other, and they could not bear to look at each other. Why hasn't Yi Shiwen come out yet? Could it be that he looks down on us? Azura opened his mouth and pointed at Yi Shiwen with unparalleled sharpness. The monstrous demonic aura that he emitted also caused many people with weaker cultivations to start trembling. His astonishing strength was also displayed at this time. I'm sorry, Yi Shiwen is currently preparing for a very important matter. He will be here in a while. Everyone calm down. Moreover, not everyone has arrived yet. What's the hurry? Yimo glanced at Azura. Without saying a word, Azura's imposing manner was completely destroyed. Trying to play this trick in front of Yimo was not good enough. Azura just took a deep look at Yimo and did not speak. He did not act rashly. Even if he was arrogant, he did not have the confidence to face Yimo. Yimo was too strong, like a bottomless abyss. Such a person, even if he did not become an emperor, he was only a step away. Soon after Ling Tian, other young supreme devils arrived. They were all super geniuses who had become famous in recent years. None of them were from the older generation. It was precisely because so many invincible geniuses appeared in one go that many people speculated that these people had already existed for a long time. However, the major forces had hidden them and did not intend to let them out. Now that they had entered the super golden era, they let these people come to the front. Many people were a little strange. Why did the two young supreme devils of the demon clan, Yi Wudi and Kuin Peng, not come? Did they not give Yi Shiwen face? That was simply impossible. Who didn't know that they were already in the same boat? Why did they not come? Now, the demon race's side had more or less appeared, while the human race's side had more or less appeared. The true representatives of the demon clan had yet to appear. The three major races of the human, demon, and demon clans had almost arrived by the time they appeared. Then the truth discussion conference would almost begin. Although the other races had geniuses, they could not compare with these three major races. Of course, there were also the Dragon Island, the ancient Phoenix world, and other worlds. However, they had always been conservative, so they would most likely not come at this time and in the future. Shinon girl has arrived, someone exclaimed. However, a fiery red light appeared in front of everyone while stepping on a ray of light. It was an extremely beautiful girl who was about 15 or 16 years old. Her face was brimming with a cheerful smile. She directly entered the main field. She is Shinon girl. She looks so young. Although we can't judge a book by its cover, it seems that she is really young. I don't know. The Fire Cloud Cave has not appeared for many years. In fact, there are even rumors in some worlds that the Fire Cloud Cave had been destroyed. Who knew that such an amazing successor would appear in this era? Shinon girl has come. What a rare guest. Yemo cupped his hands and said, Brother Yi has summoned me. How can I not come and see the world? The smile on Shinon girl's face never faded. Everyone who saw her felt warm and comfortable. Haha, Yishuan would be very happy if he knew that a beautiful junior like you would admire him. Yemo laughed out loud. Senior, you are making fun of me. Shinon girl slightly opened her small mouth, revealing a row of white teeth. She smiled. She didn't care about the so-called image at all. However, it added a bit of sunny and lively temperament to her. You old bastard. You are making fun of me behind my back when I'm not here. A slightly embarrassed voice came from inside. A figure stepped on a ray of light in the void. It was none other than Yi Shiwen. 2 men and 2 women followed behind him. The 2 men were young Kuan Peng and Yi Wudi. The 2 women were Yi Qianqian and Hua Menghan. One was on the left and the other on the right. They were like fairies. The arrival of these people instantly made the venue lively. It turns out that Kuan Peng and Yi Wudi have already arrived. I was wondering why I didn't see them here. Who are the other 2? I only know the jade immortal Yi Qianqian. Her reputation is not inferior to those peerless heroes in these years. You people have grown up in recent years. It's normal that you don't know her. She should be the outstanding talent of the younger generation in the ancient Phoenix world. She and Yi Shiwen are husband and wife. It's just that she has been in closed-door training all year round. I didn't expect that she would come out directly this time. Everyone was discussing spiritedly. Yi Shiwen and the others took their seats. Yi Shiwen didn't wait for Yi Mo's trouble. Suddenly, an incomparably huge centipede crossed the void and came over. Its body was tens of millions of miles long. Its head had already arrived, but its tail was still tens of millions of miles away. It was impossible to count how many legs it had. This centipede had just arrived when its huge body danced. It was about to pierce through this temporarily open world. Everyone looked at Yi Shiwen to see how he would deal with it, especially those supreme youth masters. They opened their eyes wide. They wanted to see how different Yi Shiwen was from the rumors. Chapter 29:38. Especially this centipede, it could be said to be ill-intentioned. Its strength was at the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. No one knew where it came from, but it was obviously planning to cause trouble. A terrifying aura covered the sky and the earth, directly shrouding the world. Who the hell is this centipede? Someone couldn't help but ask. There were so many experts present, but someone dared to cause trouble. Yi Mo and Yi Qianqian had made a name for themselves over the years. Yi Wudi, Hua Menghan, and the young Kuan Peng would definitely help him. How could he still be so confident? Yi Mo and Yi Qianqian had made a name for themselves over the years. It's the centipede great sage. Apart from him, there is no other centipede in the world with such power. Someone said, it turns out to be him. Legend has it that he once stirred up trouble in the past. Later, he offended the emperor and was seriously injured. He has been in a deep sleep to recuperate until now. These years, he has been very powerful and caused a lot of trouble. But how can he be so unwise? No matter what, Yi Shiwen can't be provoked by just anyone. The centipede, great sage? He must be tired of living. Young Kuan Peng suddenly stood up and actually wanted to transform into his real body to fight the centipede great sage. Although the centipede great sage was very strong, and his real body was even more outrageous. The bloodline of ordinary mythological beasts and demonic beasts would only lead to a dead end if they encountered him. However, young Kuan Peng was different. He had the pure Kuan Peng bloodline in his bones. It was the leader of the 10 ancient vicious beasts. No matter how fierce it was, could it be more fierce than him? Everyone looked at Yi Shiwen, but they saw that Yi Shiwen just picked up the teacup next to him and drank his tea. He didn't have any intention of intervening at all. However, everyone found that the overwhelming aura of the centipede great sage had been completely broken. Not a single trace of it was able to descend. Young Kuan Peng transformed into his real body of Kuan Peng, which was tens of thousands of feet tall. It was also incomparably huge, but compared to the centipede great sage, it was much smaller. Even so, his aura was not weak at all. A huge black light streaked across the sky. It was one of the legs of the centipede great saint that cut through the universe. It was as fast as lightning and directly pierced the huge body of the young Kuan Peng. It was ruthless and decisive, and its powerful magic power was terrifying. This leg was like an ice-cold and powerful spear, piercing a huge buckle in the world, incomparably sharp. Clang! With a loud crash, the young Kuan Peng stretched out its huge claws and collided with the centipede sage's leg. It was like the roar of gold and iron colliding. The collision between the two caused heaven and earth to collapse. Sparks flew in all directions, forming raging flames that burned in all directions. Rock-traversing art! The young Kuan Peng roared. Its huge body was like an ancient, divine mountain as it fell towards the centipede. At the same time, his two claws were like two incomparably sharp weapons, slashing through heaven and earth, bursting out with the most terrifying power in history, directly toward the centipede great sage. The centipede great sage was blasted away on the spot. Its huge body was directly rolled back in the starry sky, destroying countless stars, all of which collapsed together. Go to hell! Who told you to be so pretentious? The young Kuan Peng immediately chased after it and transformed into a huge golden hand, slapping down toward the centipede great sage. Damn it, descendant of the demon master, don't be too arrogant. The centipede great sage could not help but roar. Its whole body suddenly shrank and turned into a black-robed man with a sinister face. A long spear appeared in its hand, and it collided with the golden hand. It had already discovered that its original body was at a great disadvantage when fighting against the young Kuan Peng. It was naturally restrained, and nothing could be worse than this. Bang! With a huge roar, the two sides collided again. For a moment, it was hard to determine the winner. At the same time, the young Kuan Peng also transformed back into a human form and went up to meet it. Bang! 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 The battle between the two sides began fiercely in an instant, and the aftermath of the battle shook in the starry sky. Endless aftermath swept over, but everyone was surprised to find that when it was about to sweep into their space, it would be annihilated by an invisible force. It was silent, like a clay ox entering the sea, and disappeared without a trace in an instant. Let them fight. Let's start discussing, said Yi Shiwen indifferently, as if the fierce battle outside was not between two invincible masters. But he had his own calculations in mind. The centipede great sage had been famous for a long time, and had fought with the Emperor King countless years ago. Although it was defeated and fled, its experience and ruthlessness were not comparable to the young Kuan Peng. In comparison, the young Kuan Peng did not lose in any aspect, and even in terms of bloodline, it was ridiculously strong. It was only in terms of ruthlessness that it was slightly worse. Obviously, it had too little experience in a battle of this level. It was not like Yi Shiwen, who had almost killed a bloody path in the mountains of corpses and seas of blood with such top masters. Therefore, Yi Shiwen let him fight. Anyway, everything was under his control, and it would not cause any trouble. Although everyone wanted to pay attention to the battle here, Since Yi Shiwen had already spoken, it was naturally not good for them to say anything more. Since we are going to discuss, then let me show off my meager skills in front of an expert first, said the young supreme master of the great demon clan. His body suddenly erupted with endless demon principles, forming a huge demonic earth, as if to swallow everyone. But everyone knew that he did not have any malicious intentions, and only wanted to show his own way. As for whether there would be people who could not resist his demon path, and thus convert and fall into the demon path, it was not something he needed to care about. If one's mind was not firm, it would be impossible to achieve anything. Yi Shiwen also closed his eyes. Although he had the word demon in his hand, and his understanding of the demon path was extremely deep, he still tasted some things and obtained a lot of benefits. The cultivation of these people wasn't as good as his. However, none of them had come this far by pure luck. Everyone's Tao had their own uniqueness, and they could all serve as supplements for Yi Shiwen. "Watch me next," said Ji Xian Huang directly. His great Tao unfolded, and endless black and yellow qi seemed to transform everything in the world into black and yellow. Different from the dense demonic qi of the great demon clan supreme master, Ji Xuanwang's great Tao was vast and mighty, but it carried a kind of domineering great Tao of a king, and he was a natural emperor. Everyone closed their eyes one after another. How much benefit they could obtain from it depended on their own comprehension. However, no one could be like Yi Shiwen, with a mysterious space constantly deducing, speculating, and even restoring their great Tao. Originally, they were all sweeping the snow in front of their own door, and absolutely would not show their great Tao in front of others. Even if Yi Shiwen wanted to learn, it was impossible. However, it was completely different now. Although they definitely kept some of their most core great Tao, for Yi Shiwen, it was already enough. One or two was not a big deal, but when so many geniuses and heroes showed their comprehension of great Tao, the benefits were naturally great for Yi Shiwen. This made him more confident in crossing the Emperor's great tribulation. One by one, the masters were showing their great Tao. This was a rare opportunity. If it weren't for Yi Shiwen, how could experts of their level have the opportunity to comprehend others' great Tao? They would more or less improve themselves, so they did not reject such a form of truth discussion conference. Time passed day by day. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. The truth discussion conference had also been held for 10 days. During this process, even Yi Shiwen had already shown his great Tao. Although he only showed a part of his martial arts comprehension, it had already made everyone feel a sense of admiration and unfathomable. Many people rejoiced. Fortunately, they did not choose to resist. Otherwise, the consequences would be very serious now. Yi Shiwen could hold the title of the world's strongest for thousands of years. How could he be a simple person? Suddenly, Yi Shiwen, who was discussing great Tao with everyone, stopped his gaze and looked at young Kuan Peng and Centipede Sage, who were still fighting fiercely in the distance. Both of their cultivations had reached the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. Both were incomparably powerful. Unless one party had overwhelming power, it would not be so fast to completely suppress the other party. Although young Kuan Peng had the Yin-Yang 2 realms diagram, he obviously did not intend to take it out. He wanted to rely on his cultivation to defeat the other party. Okay, enough playing. Now let's welcome our guests. Yi Shiwen suddenly spoke. Then he didn't seem to make a move, but he simply grabbed with his big hand. The Centipede Great Sage, who had fought with the young Kuan Peng for 10 days and 10 nights without falling into a disadvantageous position, suddenly felt a chill all over his body. Almost immediately, he felt a sense of annihilation rising in his heart. This was an unprecedented feeling. Even young Kuan Peng, who was known as the descendant of the Demon Master and had a peerless bloodline, did not feel so powerless even after fighting with him for 10 days and 10 nights. He was suddenly shocked and immediately fled into the distance. But the big hand was getting closer and closer. Almost immediately, it was already behind him. The terrifying power spread and instantly crushed his will. He was forced to show his huge body that was thousands of miles long and escape into the distance. "You want to leave?" Stay. Yi Shiwen smiled slightly. His big hand suddenly grabbed and directly slapped down towards the huge centipede. Bang! The centipede was directly hit, and it let out a series of miserable shrieks as its physical body collapsed on the spot. Everyone was dumbfounded. One blow, just one blow, and the body of the centipede sage, who had been famous for countless years, collapsed. It should be known that he could fight with young Kuan Peng, a super powerhouse who was famous for his tyrannical body, for 10 days and 10 nights. Just one blow, and he could not bear it. Chapter 29:39. Yi Shiwen's peerless martial power made everyone tremble in fear. Everyone was trembling. How strong is he? Has he really become an emperor? Only an emperor could be so terrifying. Only an emperor could seriously injure a peak quasi-emperor in one blow. That was something that an emperor could do. Even those arrogant supreme young masters were holding their breaths at this time. They had never seen Yi Shiwen in action with their own eyes, so they couldn't imagine the extent of his tyrannical strength. In their opinion, although Yi Shiwen was very strong, he was at most on par with them. They were all peak quasi-emperors. Who could be weaker than the other? But now, they discovered that it was completely different. They were all peak quasi-emperors, but the difference in strength between them might have already crossed the sky and the earth. Some people even had a thought in their minds. Could it be that he could fight against a sovereign emperor? Or perhaps he had already secretly become a sovereign emperor in some secret place, but no one knew about it. If that was the case, then it seemed that everything could be explained, and everything could be explained. But then, Yi Shiwen's speed was even faster. The centipede wanted to escape. Even if only a part of its body escaped, it could be reborn in the distance. But Yi Shiwen obviously did not give it this opportunity. He directly slapped down like a sky net and caught the centipede. Then, with a loud noise, the centipede was completely turned into a cloud of blood mist. He was killed by Yi Shiwen. Simply, a powerful quasi-emperor died in the hands of Yi Shiwen. However, before everyone could regain their senses, they saw an extremely terrifying force traversing across the vast sky. In just an instant, it had completely rushed out and instantly rushed in front of everyone. It was a young man in an imperial robe. Although many people may not have seen him, his portrait had spread throughout the entire heavens. He was the most terrifying enemy of all the clans in the heavens, the rebellious emperor. He really proved his Tao and became an emperor. The aura from his body was released without restraint, completely crushing down. Everyone immediately felt an unimaginable power crushing down. Even those supreme youths couldn't withstand such a terrifying pressure from the great Tao. But none of these people knelt down. They all stood stubbornly. Their dignity and their stubbornness prevented them from kneeling to rebellious emperor, even if rebellious emperor had become an emperor. If they were given a little more time, they might be able to step into the sovereign emperor realm one day. They were merely forerunners on the emperor's path. Moreover, he was actually a person who resorted to trickery. How could they be convinced? Ha ha ha. Yi Shiwen, I heard that you're holding some kind of Tao discussion meeting here, so I came. Now that all of you are here, let me wipe you all out in one fell swoop. Rebellious Emperor's face showed a somewhat ferocious expression. As long as he killed these people in front of him, although it would not cause the clan to collapse, it would be equivalent to wiping out the future of each clan for millions of years. It would be difficult for so many super geniuses of this level to appear in the next millions of years. Any one of these people could be said to have gathered the karmic luck of an entire clan to grow to this stage. Any loss of any one of them would be a loss of the karmic luck of that clan or force. This was not something that could be recovered so easily. He deliberately came 10 days late in order to wait for these super geniuses who were originally scattered in various places to gather together. Now it turned out that he was right. Oh no, he is planning to wipe us all out in one fell swoop. The faces of these young supreme beings turned pale in an instant. They all thought about how terrifying it would be if they were all killed by an ID. They were afraid that the already hopeless myriad heavens and myriad heavens would be completely destroyed. Of course, most importantly, They were even more unwilling to die here like this. He was too sullen. Experts who had not yet become Emperor Realm experts could have a fair fight with him. Retreat! Retreat quickly! Someone shouted. However, he discovered that the surrounding space had been frozen. Haha, this is hilarious. Do you think you can escape now? V and I laughed out loud in an extremely arrogant manner. You want to escape in front of an Emperor Realm expert? That's ridiculous. You're just a group of ants. It will not be difficult for me to kill you all. Everyone was terrified, but those supreme Yus were still unwilling to give up. They wanted to struggle. Magic power surged out from their bodies, but they had no way to resist the suppression of a monarch-level power. That kind of feeling was like an ordinary person facing a boundless ocean, forever and ever. There would be no end to it. Why is this happening? No, we must spread the news and let the clan send the doctrine instruments here. Only then can we stop him. Those young masters were unwilling to give up. At this time, the only thing that could resist an Emperor Realm expert was probably the doctrine instruments that were also left by an Emperor Realm expert. Only by burning all of them could they resist rebellious Emperor, who had already entered the Emperor Realm. You still want to spread the news? Ah, that's ridiculous. You still don't understand that after taking this step, I am completely different from you. You want to go against me? That's ridiculous. Rebellious Emperor looked at everyone coldly. Then his gaze fell on Yi Shiwen, and a look of jealousy flashed in his eyes. One must know that he was already an Emperor-level character. When he looked at others, he had a look of indifference on his face. It was as if he was looking at a group of real ants. He could trample them to death at any time. However, it was completely different when he was facing Yi Shiwen. His eyes were brimming with murderous intentions. It was this person who was as weak as an ant. This person had ruined his plans time and again. He had even injured him several times and ruined his chances of achieving the Tao twice. What kind of deep hatred was this? If Yi Shiwen had not stopped him again and again, he would have already become an Emperor Realm expert. Why would he continue to struggle until now? Even before becoming an Emperor Realm expert, he had to hide from Yi Shiwen. Under Yi Shiwen's sharpness, he was completely terrified. For him, this was undoubtedly a humiliation, a huge humiliation. He was a proud genius, but there was a day where he had to hide like a dog after being killed. This stain could not be washed away in his lifetime, unless he could kill Yi Shiwen. But now, everything was finally coming to an end. This damn human in front of him was really going to die. Yi Shiwen, you must not have thought that this day would come. Everyone may live, but only you will not be forgiven. You dared to attack me. This is the punishment from God. Rebellious Emperor looked at Yi Shiwen and said while gritting his teeth. Opposite him, Yi Shiwen's clothes were constantly fluttering along with the stormy aura of the Emperor, even though there was no wind. Yi Shiwen stood with his hands behind his back. Although he was facing an Emperor Realm expert, he did not have the slightest timidity. On his body, the time robe constantly exuded soft seven-colored light, resisting all the coercion. He was the only one who did not feel the influence of the doubtful point. It's too early to say this, Yi Shiwen said faintly. At this time, you still look like you won't shed a tear until you see the coffin. As the saying goes, a wise man submits to circumstances. You still can't see it clearly. I've also seen how you killed the centipede great sage just now. You're indeed outstanding among the quasi-emperors. Your future will be boundless once you become an emperor. However, a quasi-emperor is just a quasi-emperor after all. You'll never have the chance to become an emperor. Yi Shiwen smiled bitterly and said, You still won't shed a tear until you see the coffin. Rebellious Emperor said faintly. He did not object to admitting that Yi Shiwen did an excellent job. He felt that this was the mentality that a winner should have. He was the winner. Even if Yi Shiwen did an excellent job, what could he do? He could not stop the trend of the times. A wise man submits to circumstances. Do I become an emperor through trickery like you? Yi Shiwen sneered with a mocking look on his face. You still have the mood to think about this now. I think you will not have the mood to think about this soon. Go to hell. Rebellious Emperor sneered. He was not the only one. The winner was the king, and the loser was the bandit. What right did a loser have to criticize a winner? As soon as rebellious emperor made his move, the sky was suddenly covered with a big hand. Suddenly, everyone had the same feeling as when Yi Shiwen made his move just now. No, it should be said that although the feeling was similar, his power was much greater than Yi Shiwen's. It was as if everything was tightened in an instant and then condensed together. The real terrifying power was released. Everyone felt as if they were suffocating. They were going to die in front of this terrifying power. Am I going to die here in the end? Many people had the same thought in their minds at the same time. However, at this moment, a shocking light burst out from Yi Shiwen's body. Then, Yi Shiwen made his move at the same time and attacked the big hand. Boom! With a loud roar, Yi Shiwen was directly blown away. His feet tore two huge cracks that were thousands of miles long on the ground. Even the space could not withstand such a shocking collision. Compared to the power of an emperor, Yi Shiwen seemed to be far inferior. However, what almost scared everyone to death was that Yi Shiwen was not directly killed. He was only blown away, and his vitality was fluctuating. Although he was already in a difficult situation, this was a world of difference from the scene of him being torn apart and dying tragically in an instant. Sure enough, he was boundlessly strong. Interesting. As expected of an emperor, his power is not comparable to an emperor. It seems that this game is going to end early. Chapter 2940. Yi Shiwen had originally planned to test Dini's strength. However, as soon as they fought, he already understood that he would not gain any advantage if he fought against Dni, who was already an emperor. Everyone seemed to be able to accept such a setting. He was simply ridiculously strong, able to resist experts at the level of imperial emperors and not be directly crushed to death. Since ancient times, such figures, without exception, had been famous throughout the ages. The most famous one was Heavenly Sovereign Fuxi of the three sovereigns of the human race. When he had just become a god, he had a record of escaping from the hands of the imperial emperors. After that, he advanced by leaps and bounds, and finally became an emperor. In that chaotic era, there was a high probability of being attacked by an emperor. It was not strange for an emperor to participate in all kinds of battles. The degree of chaos was far greater than it was now. In that era, there were countless super geniuses. It was to the point that even an emperor was afraid of them and had to eliminate them personally. Of course, few people could escape from an emperor. Anyone who managed to escape had limitless achievements in the end. There were also a few who became emperor-level masters in the end. It could be said that this had almost become a standard. Dini's face was also very ugly. Although he had already overestimated Yi Shiwen's combat power, he was still completely furious when he still could not kill Yi Shiwen. In his eyes, Yi Shiwen was simply the incarnation of the biggest cockroach in the world. No matter what he did, he could not kill Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen, no matter how many tricks you have, it is meaningless in front of me, Dni said coldly. Yi Shiwen did not say a word. He directly flew out and flew into the universe galaxy. Want to leave? Dni took a step forward and instantly caught up with Yi Shiwen. He did not hesitate and even caught up with Yi Shiwen's speed. One should know that Yi Shiwen was famous for his speed in all the realms. No emperor-level master dared to say that they could catch up with Yi Shiwen in speed. However, Dni could do it. This was an emperor-level master. Even the shortest shortcoming was the strongest point of the strongest emperor-level master. There was no weakness, or in other words, to an emperor-level master, there was no weakness at all. Do it! Yi Shiwen suddenly roared. Suddenly, the surrounding environment changed dramatically, and a big array appeared around Yi Shiwen's body. The entire formation seemed to have appeared out of thin air in the universe, and had surrounded Yi Shiwen. A conspiracy? These words flashed across Dini's mind, but he immediately sneered. He was already an emperor, so he didn't care about the schemes of an emperor candidate. What a joke! Do you think you can do anything to me by using the formation? Dni sneered and looked at Yi Shiwen. He took a step forward, and in an instant the sky shook and the earth shook. The matrix that was slowly emerging began to shake. The violent shaking could even be felt by the experts in the distant areas. How formidable! As expected of an imperial monarch, he really is boundlessly formidable. Many people trembled with fear as they saw this. Since ancient times, the Emperor Lord had ruled the world. It wasn't unreasonable. Now that the Emperor Lord had reappeared, they truly felt Yi Shiwen's strength. Do you think this is the extent of it? Yi Shiwen sneered. In the darkness, a few figures appeared. It was young Kuan Peng, Yi Wudi, Yi Qianqian, Hua Minghan, and Yi Mo. When Yi Shiwen and DNI were fighting, they had quietly landed in their respective positions. 5 peak emperor candidates? To me, they are just 5 ants. DNI sneered and grabbed with his hand. To him, it was just a bunch of ants. How could mere ants think that they could go against the heavens? Boom! In an instant, before the attack could hit the 5, it was blocked by a monstrous Pneuma. The 5 Yuan punishing heaven formation was finally activated. Originally, this formation was created to kill an imperial monarch. It used the power of the formation to continuously increase its power and finally killed an imperial monarch. But now, Yi Shiwen used it in reverse and blocked DNI with the power of the formation. This is the 5 Yuan punishing heaven formation. DNI squinted his eyes. The coldness in his eyes was even more obvious and murderous. This formation was also extremely famous in their Tian clan because an incomparably powerful monarch of their Tian clan had died miserably in the 5 Yuan heaven-punishing formation. But that was only when there were 5 imperial monarchs in the formation. 5 emperor candidates wanted to replicate that feat and kill an imperial monarch? That was ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Even if you use the 5 Yuan punishing heaven formation, it will only delay your death a little. DNI laughed. His voice formed a sound wave that spread in all directions. It started to shake the entire 5 Yuan punishing heaven formation. However, just as the 5 origin execution great array was about to shake, a Dao artifact appeared in the hands of each of the 5 cultivators. They placed the Dao artifacts at the core of the array and instantly stabilized the shaking 5 origin execution great array. The 5 Dao instruments emitted terrifying power. Yi Wudi held the Demon Emperor's bell. The Yin-Yang 2 worlds diagram was rotating above little Kuan Peng's head, and Hua Minghan was also wearing the phoenix robe. She was like a fire phoenix that was about to soar into the sky. Yi Mo and Yi Qianqian did not use the 2 incomplete Dao instruments, Tianyuan Mirror and Devil Worship. After all, they were incomplete. No matter how powerful they were, they had their own weaknesses. They were not complete. They were wearing Yi Shiwen's Avicii sword and Time robe, respectively. At this time, they were holding the 2 Dao instruments and standing on one side. Especially Yi Mo, who was in the middle, holding the Avicii sword, ready to help at any time. The entire 5 Yuan punishing heaven formation was completely formed. 5 Dao instruments, it's 5 Dao instruments. Many people could not help but widen their eyes in shock. Although they had been constantly overestimating Yi Shiwen's wealth, they did not expect Yi Shiwen to take out 5 Dao instruments so easily. This was something that no imperial monarch's inheritance could do. Not even the imperial clan, the Ji family. But Yi Shiwen did it. The power of the 5 Yuan punishing heaven formation that was set up by the 5 Dao instruments immediately increased. It was not at the same level as before. No wonder he dared to hold the truth discussion conference here. It turns out that he was prepared and was not afraid of Emperor Ni's sneak attack. Many people instantly understood. They were not stupid. They immediately understood where Yi Shiwen's confidence came from. He naturally had his reasons for doing this. So, these 5 Dao artifacts are the source of your confidence? But I will soon let you understand that even if you have 5 Dao instruments, you are still vulnerable in front of me. Emperor and I sneered and attacked again. The rumbling aura crushed over. It was even more ferocious than before. It could almost kill those quasi-emperors in an instant. Rumble! Emperor Ni's attack directly hit the 5 Yuan punishing heaven formation. The 5-color divine light on the 5 Yuan punishing heaven formation burst out instantly and flowed on the surface of the formation. The terrifying power that could kill a peak quasi-emperor in an instant was directly released by the five-colored divine light like water. It could not shake the 5 yuan punishing heaven formation. A little interesting, but it is still useless. Emperor and I was a little annoyed. He had just achieved Dao validation, and he was already at a disadvantage. He had attacked several times but could not defeat his opponent easily. For him, this was a kind of humiliation. Boom! Emperor and I punched in and immediately hit the 5 yuan punishing heaven formation. In an instant, the entire formation was rumbling and shaking. There was an intense scene of the earth shaking and the mountains shaking. Yi Shiwen, hurry up and go through the tribulation, Yi Mo roared. He could already feel the pressure. Even though the 5 yuan punishing heaven's great array and the Dao artifact had dispersed the power that he needed to bear, he still discovered that he could already feel the pressure from the very beginning. He couldn't afford to drag this on any longer. Yi Shiwen also knew that he could not wait any longer. He could not help but say, I understand, Emperor and I. Wait for me to become an emperor and kill you, Yi Shiwen shouted. The aura on his body became stronger and stronger. It was even stronger and stronger than when he was fighting with Emperor and I. In the sky, a terrifying will was condensing, and a terrifying power was gathering from all directions. Tribulation. He is actually going to undergo tribulation. Many people were stunned. They did not expect that Yi Shiwen would want to undergo tribulation in front of everyone, especially under the attack of Emperor and I. It was simply unbelievable. Has he gone mad? Everyone was completely dumbfounded. One should know that they could see that Yi Shiwen obviously did not set up the formation here on the spur of the moment. He should have prepared for this long ago. In other words, he had already expected this situation today. But what was he trying to do by undergoing tribulation here? One should know that if he said a word, whether it was the imperial clan, the Ji family, the martial sect, or even the other emperor inheritances, they would rush to provide him with protection and a place for him to undergo tribulation. Yi Shiwen becoming an emperor was not only related to himself, but also to everyone else. What was he trying to do? Unless he was doing this on purpose and deliberately wanted to lure everyone here. If that was the case, what was he trying to do? Many people thought of the most terrifying possibility. Everything was under Yi Shiwen's control. Yi Shiwen had already expected such an outcome. He clearly knew how dangerous it would be to undergo tribulation under the eyes of Emperor and I, but he still did it. Was he doing it on purpose? What was his real intention? However, when many people were still thinking about it, the Emperor Ni's tribulation that was condensed because of Yi Shiwen had quietly appeared. Chapter 29:41. The pressure released by the terrifying tribulation was not inferior to the pressure released by a sovereign emperor. In fact, it was even more terrifying. It was boundless, as if everything was being pulled into it. Everything, everything, everything. At this moment, all the experts realized a terrifying possibility. The heavenly Tao had manifested. The heavenly Tao was everywhere. However, it would not manifest easily because there was no need for it to manifest. However, the heavenly Tao still manifested when an emperor was about to transcend the tribulation. This was because there was no other way. What was an emperor? He created his own martial arts path and broke free from the heavenly Tao. Although he was still within the heavenly Tao, he was no longer under its jurisdiction. If the heavenly Tao was a shareholding company, then there was no doubt that the heavenly Tao was the major shareholder and controlled everything. On the other hand, an emperor was a minor shareholder. Although he could not control everything in the world, he had already broken away from his status as a worker and became one of the masters of the world. His status was completely different. He was equivalent to a small heavenly Tao. Naturally, the heavenly Tao would not allow such a thing to happen. It would inevitably send the most terrifying test. Not everyone could become a minor shareholder of the heavenly Tao. Many disciples of the Secret Alliance felt extremely depressed because they were not too far away. They spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. They hurriedly retreated, especially the Hidden King. He led the disciples of the Secret Alliance to retreat frantically. Although these disciples of the Secret Alliance were the elites of the Secret Alliance, they were not qualified to experience the Emperor's tribulation at such a close distance. At the very least, one had to have the strength of a divine king to be able to observe the heavenly Tao. Only a quasi-emperor could barely resist it. Even the supreme youths who came from all over the world stirred up the magic power in their bodies to resist the pressure from the heavenly Tao. Their expressions changed, but none of them retreated. Such a terrifying heavenly Tao was unprecedented. They had never encountered such a terrifying heavenly Tao before. However, they had to stay. If their ambition was to become a supreme emperor in the future, then they had to pass this test. Especially the heavenly Tao. They could roughly understand some of the dangers that an emperor had to face in the heavenly Tao by watching Yi Shiwen transcend the tribulation. However, how could the things recorded in the ancient books compare to what he saw with his own eyes? Moreover, during the tribulation, all kinds of heavenly laws would be flying. When the laws were the clearest, they would be able to see the entire tribulation. Therefore, even if they knew that Emperor and I would kill them if Yi Shiwen died, such a potential danger was not enough to make them leave. It didn't matter what Yi Shiwen's purpose was, but many people were constantly admiring him. Yi Shiwen was indeed audacious, but at the same time, his strength was outstanding. Dini's expression changed slightly because he could feel that he was also a part of the heaven's retribution. He could even feel the anger of the heaven's way. You want to use the heavenly Tao to force me away? You really think too simply. The Emperor Lord won't be so easily forced back by you. Dni sneered. At the same time, he felt a little uneasy in his heart. Yi Shiwen's heavenly tribulation was much more powerful than his own. As everyone knew, the more powerful the heaven's retribution was, the more terrifying the future would be. His future achievements would be even more limitless. He couldn't suppress the feeling of jealousy in his heart. This was unprecedented. Even when he was defeated by Yi Shiwen, he had never felt jealous. But now, he was actually jealous. It was precisely because he understood that every step forward after the Emperor realm was extremely difficult. Even the opportunity to become an emperor could only help him to this point. However, Yi Shiwen would surpass him once he became an emperor. It was unknown how many years of painstaking cultivation would be saved. This made him unable to restrain the jealousy in his heart. But the premise is that you can transcend the heaven's retribution first. Dni gritted his teeth coldly. Then he finally made his move. He didn't care about the heaven's way's warning and directly intervened. I am invincible. Dni truly displayed the invincible style of an Emperor Lord. With a punch, heaven and earth seemed to be reversed. The power that could compete with the heaven's retribution was not at a disadvantage. How terrifying was this? Boom! This attack directly blasted into the 5 Yuan Sky Punishing Formation. The 5 Yuan Sky Punishing Formation immediately began to shake and a crack appeared. Although the crack was repaired, Dini's terrifying strength still shocked Yemo and the others. So strong. As expected of an Emperor Lord, Yi Wudi gritted his teeth and said. However, he was not afraid. The Demon King's bell rang, and suddenly the surrounding space was frozen. The power of Dini's attack could not spread out and dissipated on the spot. The invincible power of the Demon King's bell was evident. Emperor Ni didn't hesitate to attack after his attack was blocked. Although he didn't think that Yi Shiwen could withstand the baptism of such a terrifying heaven's retribution, there was a faint uneasiness in his heart. Yi Shiwen didn't die after so many times. He was as tenacious as a cockroach. What if he didn't die this time? If you still do not die, then let me send you to heaven. Dini's attack was still bombarding, but he was not in a hurry to attack. He wanted to wait and see. If Yi Shiwen could be killed by the heaven's retribution, he would not intervene. It was not a good thing to be targeted by Heaven's Way. Although Heaven's Way wanted to kill Yi Shiwen and D&I also wanted to kill Yi Shiwen, it seemed that their purpose should be the same. However, the heavenly Tao was heartless and treated all living things like straw dogs. In his eyes, everything was the same and had no feelings. Therefore, the heavenly Tao absolutely could not tolerate this kind of behavior. This was a challenge to the dignity of the heavenly Tao. If it was not the last moment, he would not be willing to completely fall out with heaven's way. At that time, he would have a lot of trouble. Of course, this was his understanding. According to normal logic, this was going against heaven's way. It was a sin. Since it was a sin, there must be consequences and retribution. At that time, he would have a justifiable reason to make trouble. Yi Shiwen, who was in the center of the heaven's retribution, had already immersed himself in the heaven's retribution. His gilded tyrant form was fully opened, and his whole body was golden. He was like a golden man in the center of the universe, accepting the heaven's retribution. Although the time robe and the infinite pain sword had been borrowed, he did not really have a single Tao artifact left. However, this was also a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for him to use the baptism of the Emperor Tribulation to cleanse his fleshly body. For those below the Emperor, the body of an Emperor seemed to be the same thing. However, among the Emperors, there were strong and weak bodies. He was using the Emperor's retribution to refine his body. In the future, he could save countless years of hard cultivation. A tall building was built from the ground. The more solid the foundation, the higher the building could be in the future. However, the danger of doing so was naturally imaginable. Although Yi Shiwen had the foundation of gilded tyrant form, his body was still being struck by the Emperor's retribution. His skin and flesh were torn. It seemed that he would be struck to death at any time. But even so, he didn't flinch. He clenched his teeth and persevered. There was nothing in this world that could injure him to this extent. So, it was simply impossible for him to advance further with Cui Lian's body. However, this Emperor's retribution was completely different. It was enough to kill him completely. He had to be careful. Time passed day by day. The heaven's retribution was still falling. All kinds of terrible heaven's retribution emerged. Many people had never seen or heard of heaven's retribution. This was not to test the gods, but to punish a person who had broken away from the control of heaven. The strength of this heaven's retribution was completely different. Many heaven's retribution that only existed in ancient legends, and those that had only appeared on invincible emperors, also appeared one after another. Many people gasped when they saw this. Many young supreme experts' faces turned pale. What a joke! If they were in Yi Shiwen's retribution, it would not take long for them to die in the heaven's retribution. If the Emperor's retribution that they summoned in the future was also so terrible, then they would rather not attract the Emperor's retribution in their lifetime because they would die. In this endless heaven's retribution, they really felt the aura of death spreading. Even with Yi Shiwen's terrifying and unfathomable cultivation, his life aura was gradually declining in these heaven's retribution. It seemed that he could not resist it and would die in the Emperor's retribution at any time. Ha ha, Yi Shiwen, it seems that I don't need to do anything. Heaven can take you down. D&I laughed loudly. He could feel that Yi Shiwen's aura was gradually weakening and was gradually approaching nothing. If this continued, Yi Shiwen would die in the heaven's retribution in a few days. D&I was completely relieved. No matter how tenacious Yi Shiwen was, it was useless. He would still die. Even if he had the opportunity to become an emperor, he would not survive in the face of such a heaven's retribution. How could Yi Shiwen succeed? How could this be? Yi Qianqian and Hua Minghan began to panic. They were resisting D&I on the periphery, and they could not stop for a moment. They could not afford to be distracted. Otherwise, D&I would completely rush in, and the 5 Yuan heaven-punishing formation would not be able to defend against the sneak attack of an emperor. What's the rush? What's the rush? Yi Mo shouted and calmed them down. If you don't defend, D&I will be able to kill him without the heaven's retribution. Do you want to see this happen? Hearing this, the two calmed down immediately, and their eyes were filled with determination. No matter what, they had to fight to the last moment. Yi Mo was right. Yi Shiwen was fine now, but if D&I was allowed to come in, he would really die. Every minute and every second felt like a century. Yi Shiwen's aura was also weakening with every passing minute and second. Finally, It gradually approached the point where it was almost non-existent. Chapter 2942. Yi Shiwen's aura was getting weaker and weaker. Even the divine kings far away from the heaven's retribution could feel it. Suddenly, their faces flashed with incomparable horror. Even Yi Shiwen couldn't survive such a terrifying great retribution. It was really too terrifying, especially those young supreme beings. Their faces were even more pale. If their future great retribution was also so terrifying, then there was no need for them to go through it. They could just commit suicide. There was no possibility of success at all. Even Yi Shiwen couldn't survive it, let alone them. Could it be that one really had to have the so-called opportunity to become an emperor to become an emperor? Yi Shiwen's heaven's retribution had completely made them lose confidence. They had all seen Yi Shiwen's strength. It was completely above them. Although their realms were the same, their combat power could be said to be several streets ahead of them. Even so, he was still killed by the heaven's retribution. Did he even want to live? In recent times, only Emperor Qin had finally forcibly proved his way. The others either didn't dare to trigger the heaven's retribution or died under the emperor's retribution. There were no exceptions. There was even a saying in the martial sect that after the Qin emperor became an emperor, he severely warned the few old antiques in the martial sect who had the qualifications to become an emperor lord not to attempt to become an emperor, because the world no longer allowed another emperor lord to appear. He was able to become an emperor largely because of his own special reasons. No one else could replicate it. It was precisely because of this that after that, no one in the martial sect tried to become an emperor. No one would think that Emperor Qin was afraid that someone would surpass him. Moreover, the facts later proved that Emperor Qin was indeed right. All those who tried to become an emperor died, except for those who obtained the opportunity to become an emperor. Therefore, many people scramble for the opportunity to become an emperor. In the distant past, although the probability of becoming an emperor was low, it was never to the point where it was impossible to become an emperor. And there were many bad rumors about those who became an emperor with the opportunity to become an emperor. It was said that there might be ominous things happening. Therefore, this caused countless supreme beings in the universe to be even more troubled. Therefore, every time the competition for the opportunity to become an emperor became extremely intense. It had even reached the point where it was impossible to solve the problem, even if one of them died. It's over. Yi Shiwen is really dead. The myriad heavens and realms are really finished. Are we really going to surrender to the heavenly race? Go, hurry up, let's go. Otherwise, when DNI comes back to his senses, we'll be the ones to die. Many people suddenly started discussing. They were hoping for a miracle, but it was useless. It seemed that Yi Shiwen's defeat was already a foregone conclusion. They had to plan ahead and think clearly about what to do. Many leaders of the major forces fell into deep thought. Although they were not present at the scene, they were watching from afar. When they saw this scene, they could not help but have other thoughts. It was time to make a decision. Yi Shiwen was the most likely candidate to challenge the Emperor and become the Emperor. Even he had failed. How long could they resist? When the other celestial races' sovereign emperors crossed the sky dome and arrived, they wouldn't have much of a chance. The power of the lightning fell like a waterfall, leaving no gaps at all. Everyone could only vaguely see a human figure through the rebounding power of the lightning. Yi Shiwen's aura became weaker and weaker until no one could sense his aura at all. When everyone thought that Yi Shiwen was dead and was about to escape to avoid being killed by the Emperor they soon realized that something was wrong. Although Yi Shiwen's aura was gone, his body was not submerged in the thunderstorm waterfall. It was faintly emitting a jade-like luster. When warriors cultivated to a high level, they would expel the impurities in their bodies. It was normal for their bodies to be jade-like without impurities. But at this moment, it was extremely strange. Everything didn't seem right. Especially Yi Mo, Yi Qianqian, and the others did not waver. They were still using their Dao tools to protect the 5 Yuan Heaven Punishing Formation and Yi Shiwen. Is there a turning point? Everyone's eyes widened. No one knew what Yi Shiwen was going to do, so it was all just speculation. However, many people seemed to have guessed something and were looking forward to it. Everyone could see it, let alone the Emperor and I. He immediately saw that something was wrong. Yi Shiwen did not look like he was going to die, but his aura was gone. What was he doing? Even as an Emperor and I, he could not see it because the heaven's retribution had blocked it. The thunderstorm waterfall of the heaven's retribution cut off almost all auras. Even an Emperor and I was no better than an ordinary person in this situation. No matter what you are going to do, I will kill you. If the heavens cannot kill you, I will. Emperor Enai roared. He increased the strength of his attacks, planning to kill Yi Shiwen himself. Yi Shiwen was still motionless, allowing the heaven's retribution to wash over him. Oh no, he's going all out. Yemo roared. Then he felt the power that was crushing the 5 yuan heaven punishing formation suddenly skyrocketing. An extremely heavy feeling came crashing down. Boom! The 5 yuan heaven punishing formation collapsed. It was where Yi Qianqian was defending. It was time for him to face Emperor and I. Puff! Yi Qianqian spat out a mouthful of blood. Drops of blood sprayed out like plum blossoms. She took a few steps back. Her eyes were filled with shock. Emperor and I was too terrifying when he attacked with his full strength. He had the 5 yuan heaven punishing formation and the time robe to offset the power, but he was still seriously injured. If she had nothing, she would not have been able to escape death. When Hua Minghan saw what was happening, she knew that the situation was extremely dangerous. She immediately flew over and stood in front of DNI. Phoenix dance in the 9 heavens. She shouted and countless flames were spat out, forming a sea of fire. The phoenix robe on her body was emitting bursts of light. It was as if the phoenix ancestor was going to be reborn. The power of the heavenly phoenix in her bloodline was awakening. It turned into terrifying energy and rushed out. Taking advantage of this gap in the attack, Yi Qianqian hurriedly retreated to another formation core to recuperate. The time robe emitted waves of time power, and she quickly recovered. The injuries on her body were healed to their original state. At this time, the miraculous power of time completely manifested itself. Child's play. Get out of my way. NID roared. He grabbed with his hand and extinguished all the flames that were charging at him. No matter how powerful the Nanmingli fire, which was said to be able to burn the heavens and boil the earth, was, at this moment, useless. He extinguished all of them as if he was grabbing a small flame. NID's terrifying strength was evident from this. Break for me! NID threw an attack at Hua Minghan, who was in the middle of the 5 yuan sky punishment formation. Bang! This attack directly hit Hua Minghan's body. She suddenly spouted a mouthful of blood and was sent flying upside down. Behind her, a fire phoenix emerged and firmly held her so that she wouldn't fly out of the 5 original heaven punishment great formation after being hit by the attack. Humph! Emperor and I was not proud of Hua Minghan. He had only defeated an emperor-to-be. He was not even as good as Yi Shiwen. It's my turn now! Young Kuan Peng roared when he saw Emperor Enai charging at him again. He transformed into the real body of Kuan Peng, which was thousands of miles long. It covered the sky and rushed toward Emperor Enai. Just a bunch of clowns? Even if the real demon master came, I wouldn't be afraid, let alone a mere descendant. DNI sneered and attacked. Boom! With a loud rumble, Dini's punch landed on the young Kuan Peng. The young Kuan Peng shrieked in pain, and its body shattered in the air. It turned into drops of golden blood rain and spat out. Inside his body, the Yin and Yang 2 world diagram transformed into Yin and Yang Qi and wrapped him in it to prevent Emperor and I from killing him. Don't go out and let him kill you. We have to defend the 5 yuan heaven punishing formation. When Yi Shiwen passes the Emperor's tribulation, it will be our real victory. Yemo roared. The Avicii sword in his hand slashed out a shocking sword radiance. It swept across half of the sky and rushed toward Emperor Enai, blocking Emperor Ni's attack on young Kuan Peng. At this time, his face was also very ugly. The inverse emperor, who was going all out, was too terrifying. They couldn't resist it at all. It wasn't Yi Shiwen. At least Yi Shiwen could fight against the inverse emperor without being seriously injured. This was a miracle in itself, and miracles couldn't be replicated. Demon Emperor's bell suppressed the world. Yi Wuti roared and flew up to fill the gap. But this time he did not take the initiative to attack. Instead, he guarded the formation eye. He saw what happened to young Kuan Peng when he took the initiative to attack. If he was in Yi Wuti's place, he would not be any better. The Demon Emperor's bell appeared, and the world was settled. Everything was completely settled in the bell wave of the Demon Emperor's bell, and then disintegrated. At the same time, it was innately invincible. It could be said to be a peerless doctrine instrument that could attack and defend. Emperor Ni was hit by the Avicii sword, and a hole was torn. He was a little surprised. He did not expect the Avicii sword to have such power. Although it only tore a hole, it was used against an emperor, not a quasi-emperor. All of you must die. All of you must die. Don't even think about escaping. Your doctrine instruments will all be under my control. Emperor Ni looked crazy. He was enraged. At the same time, he coveted the 5 doctrine instruments. It was a top-notch wealth that even an emperor would covet. Chapter 2943. Only in the hands of a sovereign emperor could a Tao artifact truly display its might. Once he had 5 Tao artifacts. Even if they weren't his natal Tao artifacts, it would still be sufficient to greatly increase his combat strength. Thus, he absolutely couldn't allow these 5 people to escape. Now, it was just right for him to kill them all at once. Invincible, DNI roared and exploded with the true might of an imperial emperor. This was a terrifying power that had reached an extremely dangerous level. Yi Wuti also let out a long roar. He also knew that this was the time of true danger. Demon Emperor Bell summoned the Demon Emperor. Yi Wuti roared, but the Demon Emperor's bell emitted waves of shocking light. In the universe, countless seals actually moved without any wind, all of them automatically awakening. The brilliant light covered the universe and madly gathered towards the 5 original sky punishment formation. These seals formed a peerless emperor in the air. He wore an emperor robe and his face was stern. Demon Emperor. He had truly summoned the Demon Emperor. Of course, it wasn't the real Demon Emperor, but the seals that the Demon Emperor had left in the world. At this moment, they were all awakened and swept out. Demon Emperor. D and I looked coldly at the awakened Demon Emperor in front of him and blocked his attack. He didn't act rashly. Although it was only a seal that was resurrected, it was still an emperor and a peerless expert among the emperors. He was famous among the emperors. In the blink of an eye, countless years have passed. The Demon Emperor sighed. He looked back at Yi Shiwen, who was completely engulfed by the heaven's retribution in the center of the formation. I didn't expect that kid to reach this step today. The world is truly unpredictable. Back then, a wisp of his spirit dissipated and the Demon Emperor Bell was unsealed. It was Yi Shiwen who helped him kill the experts of the Netherworld Kingdom. He still vaguely remembered that Yi Shiwen was no different from an ant in his eyes. He was too weak. He didn't expect to see Yi Shiwen go through the Emperor's retribution one day. The world was truly unpredictable. Senior Demon Emperor, please make your move. Yi Wuti cupped his hands and said. All the mana in his body was burning and his face was red. Because in order to maintain this Demon Emperor's mark, he had to consume his transcendence energy. It did not appear out of thin air, and it was even condensed from the Demon Emperor's bell. If he did not have the Demon Emperor's bell, he would not be able to achieve this at all. You're not bad either. My heavenly court finally has a successor. What I predicted back then was not wrong. Although my heavenly court is in danger of declining, there is no possibility of it being destroyed. The Demon King nodded his head. He had already seen a small part of this many years ago. Many things were not fixed in the future. Demon Emperor, I advise you to disperse. Otherwise, you won't even have the last trace of your existence in this world. D&I said coldly. He was only a little afraid of the Spirit Demon King's mark. However, it would be a joke to say that the spirit demon king's mark could defeat him. No matter what, he was a peak emperor, and the spirit demon king was just a mark. My friend, you must be joking. I'm already dead. What's the point of having a mark? The demon king smiled casually. Apparently, he was very open-minded about this problem. However, my friend, you obviously took advantage of the opportunity to become an emperor. Sooner or later, you will have to pay for it. This karma is not easy to repay. Maybe you will have to pay for it with your life. Don't try to scare me, DNI said coldly. I don't need anyone to lecture me about my matters. Isn't it just the so-called ominous? Wait until I release the other emperors of my clan. I like to see what kind of ominous thing dares to covet it. You're really courting death. DNI was not ignorant about the legend of the opportunity to become an emperor. In fact, he even knew more than ordinary people. The foundation of the Heaven clan was completely revealed at this time. However, he did not care. When the emperors of the Heaven clan gathered, he would kill all monsters and ominous things that dared to attack him. At this stage, there were no secrets. The only thing they believed in was themselves. My friend, you're quite confident. Unfortunately, no matter what, I won't let you go. The Demon King smiled faintly. Even if I have to gamble on this last trace of mark, your Heaven clan has ruled the world for too long. You've used up all the good fortune. Being expelled is already a good ending. Why do you still want to force me? Shut up. Our Heaven clan is born to rule the world. What do you mean by using up all the good fortune? How is that possible? Our Heaven clan represents the Heaven clan and the world. We have done a great service to the world. How can our good fortune be used up? These are just excuses. DNI said coldly. Represents the Heaven clan in the world? Ridiculous. You're still so stubborn. The world is heartless and treats all things as dogs. In the eyes of the Heaven clan, all things are the same. Who needs to protect them? You're just using the name of the Heaven clan to do things. You still don't know your mistake. The Demon King's expression became cold. Humph, don't try to scare me. DNI said coldly. My fate is up to me. See if I don't break your last spirit mark today. DNI was already enraged. He immediately attacked. Boom! The world shook violently. Countless clouds were swept up and pierced through, sweeping toward the Demon King. Everyone held their breath. They didn't even dare to breathe. It was as if a huge hand was tightly gripping their necks. This was a battle between sovereign monarchs that was rarely seen since ancient times. Even if one side was just a primordial spirit imprint, it was still shocking enough. At this moment, the Demon King also attacked. The Demon King bell appeared in his hand. It emitted waves of fluctuations and stopped the attack. The attack launched by DNI had defeated Hua Menghan, Yi Qianqian, Little Kuanping, and the others. But now it was stopped by the Demon King bell. Was the Demon King bell really so much stronger than the time robe, the two worlds of yin and yang diagram, and the phoenix robe? There was only one possibility, and that was that the Demon King himself was already so strong. Sword! The Demon King waved his hand. The sword of Avicii, which had been in Yi Mo's hand, suddenly fell into his hand. He waved it. Suddenly, a long sword radiance shot out. The world shook violently. Everything in the world was crying and trembling under this sword. The sword radiance pierced through the sky and slashed down. Boom! The sword radiance of the sword of Avicii smashed DNI's attack. It did not lose its momentum. It bombarded DNI directly. Bang! That sword swept through everything, but it stopped 3 inches away from NID and instantly dissipated. Above DNI, the picture of 10,000 worlds was spinning above his head, protecting him. You are indeed the Demon King. If I didn't have a doctrine implement to protect me, I would have been seriously injured. DNI said coldly. No one knew when a sword had appeared in his hand. The sword was golden in color, and there were golden threads wrapped around it. These threads were actually the manifestation of Law and Tao runes. It was extremely terrifying. It was another Tao artifact. This is the Taya sword, right? This is the sword of the great human sovereign. Back then, he was defeated by you, and the Taya sword fell into your hands. Who would have thought that we would have to fight him again? The demon sovereign sighed, recognizing the origin of the Taya sword. The Taya sword, it's the Taya, sword of the human tribe. Someone from the human tribe shouted. At the same time, they felt extremely wronged. It was the sword of the great human emperor, but now it was in the hands of the opponent. It was a humiliation. Umph. You should know that only in the hands of an emperor can a doctrine implement be truly powerful. D&I said coldly, "From now on, I will not go easy on you. Even if you have the sword of Avicii, it is not enough to defeat me. I will destroy your primordial spirit with one sword." D&I made his move. In an instant, the sky and earth turned into a huge formation. A huge formation appeared under his feet. Using the power of the sky and earth, he attacked the 5 yuan sky execution formation. The terrifying aura on his body was much stronger than before. The strength of an emperor with or without a doctrine implement was several levels higher. "Time robe, I will lend you." The Demon King shouted. The time robe that Yi Qianqian was wearing was taken off and passed to the Demon King. Facing an emperor at his peak, he did not dare to be careless. He did not have a physical body. Even if he could use the Demon King's bell to transform, it was still not enough for a battle of this level. Auspicious clouds appeared under the Demon King's feet. Behind him, 5-colored light shone. Above his head, there were many auspicious clouds. He was going all out. Boom! The sword of Avicii and the sword of Taya, the two famous emperor's swords, collided completely at this moment. The mighty noble spirit of the human race collided with the demonic blood sea, sword chi, and devoured each other. The entire universe collapsed in an instant, spreading out tens of thousands of miles. This was because the heavenly way had manifested here. Someone was undergoing a tribulation here and deliberately strengthening the space. Otherwise, millions of miles would have been completely destroyed, and even tens of millions of miles would have collapsed. However, the shock wave that was emitted still dissipated completely. Countless sub-emperors and god-kings were sent flying with blood spurting from their mouths. Even though they were far away, they were still injured by the collision of the two emperors. Those supreme youths did not retreat, but stood very close. Now that they were directly affected by the shockwave, several of them had their bodies torn apart and almost died. The others were also sent flying. Only now did they understand how big the gap between an emperor and a quasi-emperor was. Compared to the two emperors, their strength was too far apart. With your skills, Demon King, it is rare that you can use these spirit imprints to this extent. However, compared to a living person like me, how long can you fight for? D&I sneered. The figure of the Demon King in front of him had become a little more transparent. That attack just now had consumed a lot of his spirit. I only blocked you for a while. Very soon, he will pass the Emperor's tribulation. At that time, it will be the destined battle between the two of you. The Demon King smiled slightly, not taking it seriously. Yi Shiwen has breath, Yemo said in surprise. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.